Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Ask a Scientist Gaming. I'm Ken Hansen. I'm an associate professor at FSU in the Department of Chemistry and Biochemistry. I work on colors and pigments, light matter interactions for solar cells catalysis. But more importantly, joining me today is Professor Sara Hart. Sara, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone. So I am an associate professor at Florida State University as well. I'm in the Department of Psychology, and also I'm affiliated with the Florida Center for Reading Research. I'm in developmental psychology, and I study kids. I study how kids learn how to read and do math, and how parents and schools are involved in that, and also how genes are involved in how kids learn how to read and do math.
Equally important, what game are you playing today?
Oh, I am playing Super Mario Brothers 1 to start, and hopefully working my way through 2 and 3.
Any particular reason behind Super Mario Brothers 1?
It was the first that I played as a child.
This is the first that many of us played. This was a milestone. You're between the ages of 35 and 45. This is an iconic game for you.
Yes, I call myself an elder millennial, so I'm right in that sweet spot.
Yeah, so I was 82. So
I'm at 81.
Okay,
I am truly the elder millennial. Yes.
The borderline.
Yeah.
All right, whenever you're ready.
Oh, okay.
Go ahead.
We're going to really challenge my abilities of being able to play and speak at the same time.
You didn't choose Battletoads, though, which was a good choice.
Was it?
David chose a really hard game to talk physics and play.
I watched occasionally when he was trying to answer questions, and he was sometimes struggling. Yep. Which already I lost my train of thought when I was beginning to talk there. So, so my kid, I have a 6-year-old as of tomorrow, likes to play video games, and he likes Mario Brothers. And we have a system where he can play the original. He doesn't like this one that much. He likes Super Mario Brothers 3, and then he also plays the Wii Super Mario Galaxy. But so I've been able to play with him a little bit more recently, and discovering that I am still a terrible jumper in this game, which is why I could never get through. I think it's World 9-8 has a really hard jump series at the very end, and I could never get through it even as a child.
So this one, I think you're thinking of 8-1. And
8-1,
it has a
is that what it
pedestal
is?
Jump, yes.
Oh, okay, where it's really, really wide, and then it's the single
Small,
pedestal.
yep.
Why did I think it was 9? Okay, yeah, that's the one I could never get past. So I never finished this game, even as a kid.
All right, well, we have Game Genie tonight, so tonight is the time.
Just give me some floating jumper.
Scuzzbot Woda says, welcome, Dr. Hart.
Thank you very much for the welcome. This is my first time on Twitch. So
Inaugural run.
Yeah, be easy on me.
So this game actually celebrated its 35th anniversary recently. So yeah, if you want to feel old,
wow.
date yourself.
So I played it pretty soon. The first time I played it was pretty soon after it came out. Then.
Yeah.
When did the first Nintendo
in the
console
US,
come out?
It was probably 83.
I'm going to throw a curveball at you and ask you if you know in Canada, because I'm Canadian.
Oh no, I don't know. I might be able to tell you Japan, but not Canada released or NES.
Okay, well, I'm going to take away some of your street cred, I guess, for video gaming.
My Mario Street.
Yeah.
All right, so you're sufficiently warm. Open up to questions.
Yeah, I haven't died yet, so that's pretty good. I'm happy to take questions.
Anyone have questions for Professor Hart?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk about it. If we got any parents in the crowd, we can talk a little bit about parenting if you have parenting questions. In general, I kind of know about kids. I also do research on twins. So I use twins. That makes it sound like I use twins to answer research questions that I'm interested in. So I can talk a little bit about twinning. There's always fun twin facts that people are interested in.
Scuzzbot asks, what are your main areas of research?
Yeah, so my main areas of research is I'm really interested in how kind of kids develop their reading and math skills, especially from about preschool, so about age 4 through, I go all the way up to the college level. So even we see differences in reading ability and math ability in college students. My main area of research is called individual differences. So that's kind of the how and why and the how much people are different from each other in their reading and math skills. So trying to figure out what makes somebody a better reader or somebody better at math than others. That's my area of research. And so I look at how kind of, nature, genes, or nurture, especially kind of what parents are doing in the home, what teachers or schools are doing, aspects of the individual. So like if somebody is more motivated or not, how those are all related to reading and math skills as kids are developing.
Equally important question. What are we drinking tonight?
Oh, you have introduced me to a new sour. I like sours. And so we're drinking Victory Sour Monkey Sour Triple.
Green screen, you'll lose the bottom green on it.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah, Sour Triple. So Sarah asked me to find a sour beer, and the guy at the liquor store said this was the sourest and most popular. So.
Wow, and I've never had it before.
Any immediate thoughts?
I like it. It is sour. I feel like I've had more sour before. But, yikes. I guess I shouldn't orally react to almost getting fried like that.
It's part of the fun. I was going to say, so when people come on here, they're worried about not being good enough at a game.
Oh, goodness.
Wow. Nice.
I totally meant to do that.
Perfect. It's almost more entertaining if you're not good at the game.
I actually thought, I was thinking like Super Mario 3 where you have to jump on their head, so that's what I was trying to do, and I missed it and went underneath him, and that's why I just won that. I guess I shouldn't give away my tricks like that.
Follow up by Scuzzbot. Do you differentiate between different types of math, especially at college level?
Yeah. So I actually worked for a while with the calculus professor, and he taught calculus, Calc 2. And he was really interested in understanding why some of the students in his class were doing okay and some students weren't doing okay. And so, Calc 2, not every student has to take it, but a lot of students have to take it. And he was really passionate about being a better instructor. And so we were identifying kind of what predicted what students would do better in his class than other students would do, or how other students would do in his class. And so he was hoping to create a kind of early warning system to identify what students were going to do better in his class versus other students. And so unfortunately, he passed away while we were doing our work, and so we couldn't finish it fully. But so yeah, I've worked on calculus, and then worked on just kind of identifying skills like how for adults, like probability skills are quite hard still, so kind of understanding probability. So we have a measure of probability, and even just basic arithmetic can still be hard, especially if you're looking at timed arithmetic. And so we study that and how it's related to how students are doing in the classroom.
So there are unique behavioral outcomes based on, like, is calc different than algebra, different than geometry?
That's what we were interested in. Especially him. I will fully admit I did not go all the way through calculus. And also the system in undergrad in Canada is different, so you don't have to take as much calculus as you do here. And I did my college in Canada. And so Calc, I guess, 3 especially is very spatial. I believe that's the correct one.
So Calc 3, somebody in chat, is that multivariable? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know actually either. And so he was wondering if maybe students that were not performing very well in 3 were potentially struggling with their spatial ability versus just the straight like algorithms, or we were also interested, his class also required reading, right? And maybe reading skills would also caused problems with success in his classroom, because it wasn't just success in calculus, it was success in his course.
Yeah.
And so we know that reading matters, we know that motivation matters, we know, other interest in the subject area matters. And so we were kind of looking at all these different predictors and what we could identify would matter for students.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense. Yeah, that's one thing that I'm thrown into this teaching position and I wrestle with what am I actually assessing, right? And so that's why I dove into item response theory, because I can do SVD analysis and find dimensionality and all sorts of stuff, because believe it or not, most of your college professors don't know how to teach. Actually, most of you probably believe that.
Yeah, we don't get really trained to do it, right? We get trained for the most part as scientists and or researchers, doing scholarship. And, you don't necessarily get formal training in pedagogy. Mm-hmm. And we also, for many of us, don't get incentivized towards pedagogy. And so you get incentivized for your scholarship. But, as long as students aren't complaining and everyone is doing good enough, then that's all that matters, especially for a research-intensive university.
Man, so one of my colleagues, one of the things they told me when I was asking about teaching and its importance, they said, back in my day, the number one thing you do to not get tenure is get a teaching award. I'm like, all right. And then I got a teaching award.
Yeah,
and tenure.
Everything was fine.
Yeah, exactly. I think they were trying to emphasize teaching doesn't matter, but what a...
Yeah, that is really, you work at a university because you're interested and passionate about students,
yeah,
right?
Exactly, and educating.
Yeah, you don't work at a university. You could go and be, a scientist or a researcher in other areas that don't involve students. Mm-hmm. I've heard around my department in psychology that the expectation is if you're a good researcher, then you're likely also a good teacher. They're associated with each other. If you're good in one area, you probably care enough in another area. And for the most part, almost everybody is pretty good at it. Mm-hmm. But actually understanding like what you're doing with your IRT stuff and really understand that is a whole other level that I would say that most of my department or most research professors are not necessarily doing. But that's what makes you kind of unique, I think.
It was more born out of frustration. It's so frustrating as an instructor. So we write a test, especially in the sciences, and we say, I think this is a good question, but I have no objective assessment if it's good or not. I have no objective assessment if it correlates with overall exam outcomes. And the more I started to dive into it, the more I found across, Scuzzbot asked, what is IRT? And so it's item response theory. So there's classical testing theory, and then there's modern testing theory. I should have you explain all this because I only learned about it recently. Sarah's literally an expert in this.
I've done it a few times, let's say that.
But it's modern testing theory, where basically says we can't treat every single question as being the same difficulty. There's a range of difficulties on the exams, and we can model that, and we can find out student ability versus question difficulty. And we can find out things about quality of question and quality of exam. And that's what I really started to dive into with one of my oldest friends and colleagues, Ben Sorensen, who happened to work for a company that did IRT for the standardized testing companies.
Oh, like the ETSs or SATs of the world.
Exactly. The high stakes exams, he's the one that did the analysis for them. So I learned a lot from him.
Okay.
Look at that. Another castle down.
Yeah, and I did just learn the hard way that do not actually land on their head in this game.
Is it related to adaptive testing? It can be.
Yeah, it can be. Yeah, I think IRT is the basis of adaptive testing, with the idea being that you have items of different, right, so that with classical test theory, the idea is that, if you take let's say a multiple choice exam that's 50 questions, and you get a score out of 50, the idea is that every one of those questions is worth the exact same. It's the same in difficulty. But IRT says, not every question necessarily represents the same level of difficulty. Getting it correct or incorrect for question one, I knew better than that, is different, if you are someone who has, it's talking about statistical models, so it's the hard part for me.
So select start gets you back to 3-1.
Okay.
I don't know if you knew that one. Select start again. Hold select, then start. Oh, hold select. Sorry. All right, we're starting over. Do you want Game Genie codes? Do you want infinite lives?
Yeah, that's probably a good idea, so that people don't have to watch me start from the very beginning.
All right, so pause. I'm going to play with that. I'm going to go to this screen, and you're going to talk more. Specifically, I want to know, 6-year-old Sara Hart did not say, I want to be a professor in developmental psychology. So what took you to where you are now?
Yeah, 6-year-old Sara Hart said that she wanted to win the Nobel Prize.
There's still time.
She wanted, they don't like to give it to behavioral scientists, especially when you're not an economist. She wanted to win an Olympic gold medal for downhill skiing and win an Academy Award. So
that's a lengthy list.
High goals, for sure. But I was always interested in science, and I thought I was going to be a physician, actually.
Oh.
And so I wanted to be a physician for most of my life.
So it's through undergrad?
Yeah, until I decided that I hated organic chemistry.
Ouch.
Awkwardly now.
So the next person on here will be Justin Kennemore, organic professor, award-winning organic professor.
Yeah.
Had you had Justin Kennemore, you would have been a chemist.
I would probably
It
would
would
have
have changed your life.
Yeah.
That's no joke, though. The right professor will change your life.
It's true.
So you should have infinite lives now.
Okay.
Let's test it. Just die. To Goomba 1. Oh, Fullerene 60C. I'm ready to drop. I'm ready. I dropped organic. Oh, that sucks.
Yeah, organic chemistry. I realized when I was taking undergrad organic chemistry that I could have probably done okay. It is not my strong suit for what I'm good at, but I could have done okay. But instead, I was making choices like going out having drinks the night before an exam. And for somebody who wanted to go to medical school, those are poor choices. And I kind of realized and reflected upon that fact that I was doing that. And it probably was a sign that it wasn't for me. I wasn't trying hard enough to reach that goal. I was a first generation student, and so I didn't really know much about science or getting a PhD.
A little chemist interjected. I had a really good prof, but still hated it. So that's fair. That's a fair critique.
I mean, I will say all I remember is like left and right chorality. Is that the correct?
Chirality.
Chirality.
Yes.
Okay.
No,
also a factoid that comes out because we're close to American Thanksgiving right now. That comes out every Thanksgiving, Canadian or American, is that it's not tryptophan. It's not the turkey. It's the side dishes that have more tryptophan. Is that correct?
Yes, but tryptophan doesn't make you sleep. That's an urban myth, actually.
Oh.
Yeah. I don't know why that was propagated, but it's basically your stomach being full is what makes you sleep because your body's dedicating too much energy to your stomach processing
No
food.
way.
Yes.
So my organic chemistry professor was like 50% correct.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the turkey, but it's not the tryptophan either.
Yep. Yeah.
So yeah, that's all organic chemistry was just not, yeah.
What is it about organic chem that is so polarizing compared to other chem classes?
It's true.
It is, sorry, I'll...
No, please answer.
I think it's because some people intentionally treat it as a weed out class.
Yeah.
Like they want this to be a sink or swim event. It's not about learning the science. It's about who can I weed out by testing a certain way or, they're teaching it, they're teaching it not as a learning exercise, but as an assessment exercise. And it weeds out students, and it might weed them out for the wrong reason. And it's really a shame that when they do it that way. So,
I buy, as somebody who kind of thinks about what's influencing students, I would buy that. You're right, because how do you have all of these kids who are, likely motivated and interested in the classroom, and so resoundingly you hear terrible things about organic chemistry for most people, not most, for many.
And the other thing is it depends a lot on how you teach. So organic chemistry it's molecules interacting with each other to make new molecules, but you can look at that through very different lenses. And so when I was taking undergrad organic, I was pre-med. I was pre-physical therapy till I took organic and fell in love with it. So I did the opposite trajectory of you. But it's because I had Dan Gregory, who was a physical organic chemist. He wasn't interested in making molecules necessarily as much as understanding how molecules interact. So he had a very different lens, whereas somebody that does organic synthesis cares about named reactions and knowing an encyclopedia of reactions, and they teach it very differently. And so your experience would be very different depending on that. Are you allowed to say who you would recommend for organic professors at FSU? I'm allowed to. I'm not going to. This is going to be recorded and on YouTube. I will
And
not.
you still want to get promoted to full professor at some point.
Exactly.
And have your colleagues like you.
I am not going to go on record. Yeah, I apologize. Off record. Set up a Zoom meeting, something. But yeah. Oh, anyway, so you didn't like organic.
Yeah,
then
and so that made me
psychology.
reflect. And then around my terrible jumper, told you.
Sorry.
Around my third or fourth year of undergrad, I learned what a PhD was, and I learned that you could get your PhD in psychology. I was a psychology major, and I could still be called doctor. And it's embarrassing, but that is the reason why I decided to do it. Coupled with the idea that I was actually doing well in my psych classes and loved them. Realized that I was good at writing and statistics and kind of thinking big picture creative stuff with science and reading other people's science and critiquing it or seeing next, interesting new areas after that work. And so kind of all the things that make a good research scientist. I guess you can't kill those guys from jumping below. And,
Sniped.
yeah.
Sniped with a spiny.
It turns out I should not have warped to World 4.
Believe it or not, on the speed run, this is the easiest level.
No way!
Yep.
It's because I'm going too slow, right? You just have to go fast.
Yeah. You can full speed jump over every one of those guys.
No way!
Yep. The hitbox is small enough that you can go over the top. But yeah, so psychology, went to grad school,
and so
got a
went to
PhD.
grad, and then I found out that you could get paid to do your PhD.
That is an amazing, realization. For those of you in chat that don't know, if you do any of the, chemistry, biology, physics, psychology, you get paid to go to school. They cover your tuition, they cover your salary. You probably have to TA a class or two, but you get paid to get a PhD.
Yeah, and so it's not, you're not like your friends who've gone out to get real jobs making money in your 20s like normal people do, but I found doing my PhD this wonderfully selfish time.
Yep.
That you get to think about, really big thoughts, and terrible jumper. And yeah.
Aside from a postdoc, if you do a postdoc, that's the most intellectual and financial freedom you will ever have.
Yeah.
It's just an amazing time to be discovering things.
And so, I decided, now figuring out my area, I had actually never taken a developmental class. I've actually have no formal training in developmental psychology. My degree is not in developmental psychology. But I realized my honors thesis advisor, so I did an honors thesis because I liked doing research. And he did some twin studies, so it's called behavioral genetics, kind of understanding the nature and nurture of things. And I took a behavioral genetics class from him. I did not do my honors thesis in behavioral genetics, but I was always interested in what makes some people smarter than others. So I was interested in intelligence, and again, ability or differences, like why some students do better at school than others. And so that was his research expertise. And so I studied that as my honors thesis. And I applied for a PhD program, and I did not get into any place my first year because I asked for no help and I didn't know what I was doing. And so then I took a year off and worked and made money.
You took a gap year before they existed.
I did, yeah.
That's awesome.
And
You took them before they were cool.
Before they were cool, right? I've always been like a leader.
Yeah.
Right?
Setting trends.
Yeah. And finally, I asked my honors thesis advisor for help, which I should have done at the very beginning. And he told me, the area reading, especially at that time, understanding why some students are better than others at reading was a really hot topic. There was lots of federal funding for it, which as you get up more and more into our research area, you realize that being in a fundable research area is important. And so then he suggested some people that he knew in the field that were researching kind of student achievement and reading, and I applied for those people for my PhD. One of them happened to be a twin researcher who studied nature, nurture of reading development and a little bit of math development. And that's how I ended up in my area. So just kind of stumbling into it.
I think that's most of us.
Yeah.
Like very few of us, at least that end up in academia, thought we were going to be here. But
No, yeah, I had no idea.
But-
I still am shocked that I'm here, to be honest.
we love where we land.
Yeah.
Does your research consider economic and geographic factors?
Geographic factors a little bit, yes. I guess economic too, if you count socioeconomic status as economic. So like, parental income, like how much a family makes, what a family is parental education, and parental like job prestige, so socioeconomic status. Yeah, I consider that's one of the main correlates of the type of work that I do. So one of the biggest predictors of how a student is going to do in school is their family socioeconomic status.
And there was a great comment on Twitter at one point. Somebody, like, they were talking about genetics and predicting intelligence and stuff, and they were like, how would you like to figure out, based on one code, whether your student's going to score high on the SAT? And somebody replied with, yeah, it's their area code.
Yeah.
That is a pretty good predictor.
It is a pretty good predictor. On average, when you summarize across all of the research, the average correlation of socioeconomic status to student achievement is, I think it's 0.31, so that's a correlation coefficient. So what that means, if you're talking about, like if you have, I find it easier to imagine variance. So like all of the things that can influence somebody in their school achievement, all of the possible sources of what makes somebody a better or worse on a given test or reader or whatever it is. Socioeconomic status accounts for whatever the square root of 0.31 is, so around 15%, is that correct? Squares are...
I'm not doing that off the top of my head.
Oh,
Somebody
you're
in
my
chat.
chemist, come on.
I'm not a computational chemist. Someone in chat answered that.
Other than the only other best predictor of how you're going to do is how you did before.
All right. That makes sense.
So your previous performance is also a great predictor?
Yeah, it's pretty anticlimactic, but it makes sense.
But the question was so economics. So that's how I look at economics. I don't go much more fine grained than that. But for where your geographical stuff, I had a PhD student, my first PhD student. She did her dissertation on using GIS technology, so geographical information systems.
Sounds about right.
That sounds about right. I just know it as GIS technology, so that you can map location distances. So we mapped distance from a student home to what we termed as kind of more positive or more negative environmental factors or context factors. So things like, we were interested in student reading, right? So we mapped student home to the closest library, with the idea being like, access to a library would be positive. Would that be good? And then we also mapped student homes to Superfund sites. So, environmental pollutants. We also mapped a student home to
I can't believe that didn't hit you.
I think it did kind of half hit me.
That hitbox. Well done.
We mapped student home to like alcohol sales establishments.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you want to know the path?
Is it down or up?
It's down.
Down. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend too much time.
It's killing you watching me do this, isn't it?
I actually never play these levels. I only play...
Oh, because you skip ahead because you know all the right...
Yeah, we do all the warps.
What it worked out being is the most... it was incredibly small overall effect size, so a small effect, but students' home distance to homeless shelters. was a negative correlate of their reading ability. And in no way, when I say correlate, do I mean that that's causal, but likely it represents that some students, if you live in a neighborhood that's closer to a homeless shelter, there's probably other stuff that's happening in your neighborhood. Maybe it's more chaotic or disorganized.
I was going to say, do the same study with pawn shops or
exactly.
bail bonds and,
these types of neighborhoods,
they don't show up in upper middle class.
Yes. And that was negatively associated with students.
Ooh, Fullerene 60C. Is there a map of genes to educational traits? I remember hearing there was a gene responsible for the ability to learn 3D things easier.
Is there a map? So is there a map of genes to traits?
Like directly tying genetic markers to educational traits, I think is the question.
Yes. So that's a newer area of work. So if you all have heard about the human mapping the human genome, which completed in the early 2000s, that kind of opened up our ability to understand what specific gene variant. So it's not the gene. Yikes! It's not the specific gene. Oh, did you see me? That's
Nice.
my.
Nice.
I'm shaking the controller, which is what you do in Wii, Mario.
Yeah.
You can associate the different variants, so the type of gene that somebody has, not their actual genes, right? Because we don't vary much between individuals on our actual genes, but the version of our gene we vary on between individuals. And so we've been able to map the version of the gene that you have across all of your DNA, across your genome, and that has been mapped to certain traits. No! Sorry. That was really loud.
No worries.
But that was a really sad way to die.
Infinite lives.
Yeah. And yes, it has been linked that you need really, 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 really large samples to do this, with reliability, so like in a good way. And the trait that's most related to what I study that has been done kind of in the most reliable way is educational attainment. And so there's a really interesting reason why it's educational attainment, because you might think, so educational attainment is like how many years of school, like what your final degree is as an individual. And that doesn't seem necessarily super interesting on the surface. It probably isn't super interesting on the surface, but they've discovered a sample size, you need like 1 million or more individuals to do the genetics work properly. And so it's really hard to study 1 million or more individuals where you have got their genes, you've got like their saliva or, cheek cells, and you have their genes, and you've also then measured their reading. And normally to measure reading, you can maybe do a little bit online, but typically you need like one person measuring somebody's reading. So it's like one-on-one measurement.
So when you say reading, just general outcomes, or what would it
I'll just use it very generally. There's lots of different reading abilities, component skills of reading, but we'll just say it very generally right now. So anyway, why educational attainment? Well, so you have all of these samples, whether it's in breast cancer research or whatever it is, and what's a typical one of the few questions that somebody answers, no matter what the research project's about. And that is, how far did you go in school? What your research attainment was. So most of the original projects actually had nothing to do with educational attainment. They just happened to ask that question. So we could combine the data sets and all those participants. That was pure luck. And so they were able to combine all those data sets and get to a sample size of over 1 million individuals. And then look to see what variants of genes are associated with educational attainment. And that is called a polygenic score, that method of doing that. And that's the closest reliable kind of knowledge of genes related to what I do. But there have been other studies, you're right, there's been like a spatial ability one, there has been a reading ability one that have looked to see what variants of genes are related to spatial ability or reading ability. They just have much smaller sample sizes.
Oh, that's interesting. Calm down, Bronco. Is there anything mappable that's different between prodigal children and other children outside of money?
You know, I don't know much. There have been some research projects that look specifically. There's one that's been like has been going for a long time at Vanderbilt.
Oh, that was harsh.
That was brutal. Still have 4 lives left though, so I'm good to go.
Just keep dying. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I am going to actually do that for you. So I'm not super familiar with the work that looks expressly at those like kind of really high achieving students, but no, in general, what we find is that something that influences, you know, a student that's in the mean of a distribution, so like typical ability, those same influences tend to be what influences you if you're at the high end or also then at the low end. Because we have something called a normal distribution of these traits. So, you know, you have your nice normal curve, which if you've ever taken statistics, you've maybe like learned about the normal curve. And so high performers, high achievers are just at the higher end of the same curve as, you know, average performers and as low performers. And what influences or is related to that curve are the same. We don't see that like subgroups of students have different things that matter for the most part. And so kind of equally, you know, to be high performer as a student, you know, whatever the trait could, you know, the same things matter. You've just had a different combination of those things and a different kind of positive or negative of those things that influenced you to be where you are on the curve.
So, more lighthearted question. We're going heavy here. So this is one of my favorites. I've seen a lot of movies.
Yes.
One of the things I'm very interested in is, and this is a personal thing for me with chemistry, is what movie or TV shows get your discipline right or wrong?
Yeah, so the one I bring up all the time, if we're talking about like how genetics are associated with like life outcomes, is Gattaca.
Good or bad?
Bad.
Oh.
And then I bring it up, and then I get told that not a lot of people have seen it. But I have to believe that lots of people have seen Gattaca. I think it was a great movie.
Spectacular movie.
Wasn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Ethan Hawke, is that who it is?
I mean, to be fair, in defense of that, the point at the end was it wasn't genetics dictating the outcome, right? Because
I don't even remember that. Is that the ending?
Oh, no, I'm not going to spoil it for people in the audience. Watch Gattaca.
Oh, we didn't even spoil alert.
Sorry, everyone.
But yeah, the idea, at least that's introduced at the beginning, is this, you know, our advanced society, you cheek swab somebody and you look at their genes, and you can then predict as a baby what they're going to grow up to be. And then I think as a society, they would like stream some individuals that didn't think were genetically, you know, good enough into bad things. That's my hazy memory. So
that's the bad one. Is there somebody that gets it right, either in application or in delivery? It's like Sesame Street does pretty good, right? Or no? Are you going to tear apart Sesame Street?
I've actually not watched enough Sesame Street to remember off the top of my head.
Yeah.
When you're talking about the genetics bit, actual like Hollywood movies, I don't know any off the top of my head that do a good job. What that comes up quite a bit recently, but I will say that I've never seen it, is Three Identical Strangers. Everybody's been really into that movie recently.
I'm not familiar.
Yes.
Oh, wait, is it a documentary?
Yes, it's a documentary.
Oh, yeah, where they intentionally...
separated,
oh,
yeah,
yes,
the
I
triplets.
have seen that. Never mind.
Yeah.
Holy crap, watch that documentary.
Yeah, and so I've heard that that's great. I actually have this thing where I'm not that interested in watching things that are too close to my research area. And so I haven't actually seen it.
I don't think that's close to your research area.
Well,
like,
that is, it was a whoa, I should not have survived that.
What the hell just happened? Did anyone see that? Can you clip that? How did you just go through that fire bar?
I have no idea. Oh my gosh.
That was amazing.
I did not deserve to survive that.
Oh, wow. But it's a good documentary. It's a good just
and so it's a
storytelling.
real, obviously it's a documentary. It's a true story. There have been, and actually in my field, a more famous example of that. So that's like this, I forgot again that was going to happen. No, I'm not going to make it. So he was an unethical scientist that did that. What happened during the Depression? Again, I'm talking and I can't forget it every single time.
Take your time.
Yeah. During the Depression, twins that were born. I almost did it again. Twins that were born were separated by many adoption agencies because during the Depression, families couldn't afford to take on more than one child, they thought. And so they separated infants and twin infants and didn't tell them that they had twins. And so that happened during the Depression. And in the 70s, some researchers at the University of Minnesota found the twin records of all of these twins who didn't know they had twins, that didn't know they had been separated at birth. And adopted apart, and they recontacted those twins and they brought them back together again. The formal name of the study I don't remember, but I know it as the Minnesota Twins Reared Apart study, and it's quite famous and it's still ongoing. So they brought together these twins for the first time in the late 70s, and they still research them, and they look to see it's like this perfect design that's not typically ethical to manage, but you look to see how identical twins, what they look like how related they are to each other on a certain trait, even though they did not grow up with each other. So you can control for all that environmental stuff and look to see how much is actually genetic or not. And some of the one of the very first things that they measured on these twins were just even a picture. They took a picture when the twins first got off the plane in Minnesota and met each other in the 70s. And even what the twins decided to wear and what their hair looked like when they showed up. So these are adults. They were adults at the time who had never met each other. And the similarities of the identical twins is incredible. Even choosing things like haircuts, what they're wearing, their occupations. Even there's some famous examples of twins who've married women. I forgot about the time. Married women with the same name.
That's interesting.
And then there's one set of twins, I think, then they divorced that first woman and married
someone
another
else,
woman
yes.
with the same name, and they were both truck drivers, I believe, and their favorite beer was the same. So these really interesting examples. So yeah, the three identical strangers is like a pretty unethical extreme situation, but a more commonplace study was this that Minnesota Twins Reared Apart study, which was kind of happened because of what was going on culturally with the Depression, and resulted in this really cool study.
Oh, you can pause. No, we're talking. We're getting to Bowser. Good focus.
No, it's okay. That was all I was going to say. That was a really long story, as you saw me struggle to try to complete that.
Well, we got a,
Oh, okay.
we got a lighter follow-up after Bowser.
Okay. I don't.
Just run and jump. Just commit.
Good advice.
What is your favorite children's book and why?
Oh, goodness. That's a really hard question.
Oh, I thought that was a light. Well, it's light, but it's hard.
It is really hard.
More?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right.
You know, I've been really enjoying reading to my son, Oh, the Places You'll Go. I like the pictures quite a bit. That's Dr. Seuss. I believe there's, Dr. Seuss uses rhymes that kids really like and a way of speaking that kids really like the flow of when you're reading the book to kids. They really enjoy it. And I do enjoy reading it to my son. So I would say that that's not from a reading researcher perspective what the best book is. I just have been enjoying reading that to my kid. But there's probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 20 books that we like reading right now, and they all kind of have a different place. You know, some are stories that your kid likes. Some are, you know, you can have fun voices that your kid might like. Some might talk about content that, you know, that you're really, you know, interested in and talking to your child about, whether it's, you know, based on something so like something you're interested in socially or whatever it is, that, you know, conversations can come up as you're talking with your kid based on the book. So that's why it's really hard. I know you missed half my answer, but the crowd heard, and it's really hard for me to answer that question because it really depends on the time and the place, I guess, and what you're looking for from a book at that given time.
What's your kid's favorite book at 5 years old?
Yes, turning 6 tomorrow.
Yeah.
He does like reading The Places You'll Go right now. He asked for that quite a bit. He likes, he's starting to get into fairy tales. So we have some, like, I don't know, garage sale fairy tale books that are like the classic, where you're like, I don't know if that's developmentally appropriate to tell this story. The real fairy tales, you know, when the children and parents are dying very unfortunate ways.
Yeah. The dark Disney.
Yeah, the dark Disney. He's getting into those right now.
It's awesome. Ariel. Yeah. It does not end up well for
no, it does
Ariel.
Not. I'm trying. He also likes. He does love to be engaged and like interact with books, right? So kind of one of the key things and why reading to your kids is so important. You know, not only do you usually in books you read vocabulary words that you don't necessarily say all the time, so they get exposed to new vocabulary words, but also it gives you an opportunity to have conversations with your kids. So like as you're reading to them, like ask them questions about the content, or even ask them if they remember what the story was about, or ask them, kind of a follow-up question, even like, what animal is that you see in the picture? You know, kind of have conversations that a book can help guide you through that.
As the scientist, I like to ask, what do you think is going to happen next?
Oh, predicting.
Hypothesis-driven reading.
Even, you know, if you're like, oh, let's work on math a little bit, you can say, like, how many trees are in this picture? And the book can be about something totally different. But, you know, you can ask, or what character is bigger than another one? You can talk about magnitude differences in the characters.
So I can't help but feel you're cheating in child rearing. You know too much. The rest of us are just on our own. We're doing our best. We're not doing it well, but good enough.
You know,
they're not dying.
Until recently, I used to teach at the undergraduate level child psychology, and it was a 220 student class. So, you know, big section class. And what I would find, I would always ask at the beginning of class, or why you were in my class. It was not required for psych majors. And so I would get actually less than half of my students would be psych majors. And about a quarter would be students that were in degree programs where it was required. So other non-psychology degree programs required it. Some education and music programs, like music education. But about half to a third of the class were people who were interested in kids. They were interested in being parents one day, or they had younger siblings. Yeah. They were just intrinsically interested in children. And so I taught a lot of the class, you know, I had to think about my psych majors, and I had to think about, you know, the science of, you know, developmental psychology, that was embarrassing, child psychology. But also I had to think about the students that were interested in being parents. I wanted to know more about children and being a parent. And so about half of my class was parenting tips, kind of things we knew about parenting.
I respect that. That's like, they went above and beyond, right?
Yeah,
they did their
right?
homework.
I guess they were looking for an elective, and you're like, so many people love children, right?
Yeah.
The babysitters. I was actually never I babysat rarely. I never super loved children. Ironic.
Are your kids watching this?
Yeah. They're fun and cool, and people are interested to learn more about them.
Yeah. I respect that. Like, so I do my occasional Google internet research, but if I'm going to be honest, I may have done more homework on Super Mario Brothers 1 than most of my child rearing. Because it's just like, you do good enough and then they survive. And,
That
you know?
is, so, right, the formal name for one of my fields is called behavioral genetics, right? That's the twin stuff. That's the nature and nurture stuff. And kind of the take-home message from behavioral genetics is that, right, genes matter too. And they interact with environments and are associated with environments. But in general, right, a lot of the most important parenting decisions you make is who you decide to have a child with. And
wow, no pressure. It's like, think of that next time you're on Tinder.
Yeah. Just use birth control. And so, you know, in reality, I think that, as a society, I should have just gone right away. They're like, I call them like, I don't mean to be disparaging to mothers. I am a mother, but I call them mummy blogs, right? But this idea of like kind of outdoing parenting and having lots of engaged parenting and crafts and baking and, you know, pumpkins that look amazing and all, you know, costumes that are perfect and homemade and kind of all of this race towards this type of parenting. I should have just ran underneath them.
It's basically a 50-50.
Yeah.
Coin flip.
You know, those types of kind of smaller everyday decisions don't matter to kids. What you said is correct. You know, just, you know, don't withdraw love from them. Don't abuse them. And that's about it.
I remember, so Sarah and I used to do the in-person Ask a Scientist at Railroad Square Park, and I was like, I don't know what question I asked you, but there were a couple that stuck with me, and one was like, don't withhold love. Like, all right, I'm an awesome parent, like, as long as you don't withhold love. The other one was about daycares, when I was deciding that, and you're like, do you think your child will survive? Then it is a good daycare.
How are things been working out for you?
That both of them have survived.
Yeah.
So we are 2 for 2, 100% on our child's survival. It's an awesome daycare.
I try to, you know, be always like, be kind to yourself as a parent. Parenting is hard. And you don't need the added pressure of, did you use only organic, non-GMO food when you're baking the cookies for the bake sale? Like, that's just too much. That's more, it doesn't matter. For most of your kids' outcomes, you know, be kind, be consistent, be loving but firm, you know, have good boundaries that your child knows and understands and can predict. And that's all that matters. That's not all that matters, but that is a majority of, you know, kind of what matters. The day-to-day decision making.
Fullerene 60C, so put in effort, but not too much.
I call it good enough parenting. Other people have called it that too.
Why haven't you written a book with that title yet?
I know. You want to be a good enough parent so that.
I mean, but that would be a relief to a lot of parents to see someone that's an expert say, don't lose your sleep over these things. It's mostly trivial, right?
It is mostly trivial. It kind of washes out, right? Think about, you know, if we were that susceptible to every small, everyday kind of perturbances?
Yeah.
You know, it would make successfully developing very difficult. And so, you know, just on average, be good, you know, on average care, you know, love your kid. And, you know, if you care enough to even ask if you think you're a good parent, then I almost can guarantee that you're already a good parent. And most people do good enough.
Unless you're posting that question on Facebook just to get attention, then you're probably not a good parent.
Well, yeah, you might be motivated by other things.
Maybe you're a narcissist. Well.
Yeah. But yeah, there are, you know, in general, give your kid love and give your kid a warm, predictable environment. And that will matter quite a bit.
All right, so let's do a hypothetical question.
Yeah.
If you had unlimited resources to conduct an experiment in your field, what would you conduct? I guess when I ask that to a physicist, I'm giving them $300 million. You don't have to answer this, but if ethical boundaries were blurred, what study would you like to do?
This was one of the questions that I got asked during my PhD.
Unlimited twins by Fullerene 60C.
Well, really, yeah. And really, I mean, did you say ethical stuff does not matter?
No.
Yeah, because if ethical stuff doesn't matter, then truly taking twins and separating them at birth and rearing them apart is where the cool stuff happens. But yeah, ethics.
That's the ethic boundary. So it would just be basically tracking them over time. So
tracking them over time and choosing the environments that they get put in. And decide, and then you can really figure out. So if you take identical twins, so they're matched on all their genes, right? The genes you inherit from your parents, and then you put them in different environments, and you choose the manipulation of the environment. So like whether it is bad parenting, however we define as bad parenting, then I can actually say to you concretely what bad parenting looks like.
It could be bad, or it could be good, depending on your.
We don't know.
Glass is half full.
But that really, when you're talking about human subjects research, which is a psychologist, that's what we're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's the only way to do it.
Then, it's less the money and it's more the ethical stuff that, to do. By nature, the type of work that I do is correlational. So I can only talk about associations, right? I can't necessarily talk about what causes what, right? All of this is on average what influences twins in the US. When I talk about these effects, right? Parenting even, when I talk about that, it's mostly based on samples here in the US and that look a certain way, mostly Caucasian backgrounds and mostly middle class backgrounds, where the research has been done on those individuals. And so, to a human subjects person, then, to do something really, really interesting, you would be manipulating the environment in ways or manipulating the individual in ways that are not ethical. But that's how you would then do that experimental design that gives you causation.
In physics, we call that a thought experiment, where you can't actually do it, but you think about it, what it would look like if you did.
Yeah, what would you then say, how you can manipulate the physical space or something like that?
Yeah, or things that, I don't know if you've heard of Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah.
But it's basically applying quantum mechanics to a macroscopic thing, and nobody can actually do this experiment, but you can think about what the outcomes would be and come up with new hypotheses. So is Schrodinger's cat an ethical experiment? Probably not. But
no, but you see, we could do thought experiments. Ooh. So
they won't hit you if you're on the ground.
I did not know that.
Yeah, they will never drop down all the way.
Oh, wow. So, we could think about it, but what we're really interested in is doing experiments to be able to know causation.
Yeah.
What really causes something. Everything, all of this advice I'm talking about is just still based on correlation. So what really, causes outcomes for kids.
It's a fun one. Is there a major breakthrough in research that's expected in your field in the next 5 years?
In developmental psychology, I am not aware of anything that we know of that might come in 5 years, because that type of research question is to know that something is coming out in 5 years.
Everyone would do it and it'd be out in a year.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's also sometimes it's like an engineering problem. And sometimes that's what's frustrating about being in the behavioral sciences versus the physical sciences. It's just, like the COVID vaccine, right? It's just a combinatorial problem, right? Like we just got to keep trying the things and to see what of the things will work. But in behavioral sciences, we don't really know even that, what we can manipulate or what might possibly work. So behavioral genetics, that question is, I think, I don't have an answer for that. But in genetics, that human genetics work that we were talking about with what variety of gene you have and how that's related to your outcomes, that science is progressing so quickly. And designs, like statistical designs to use that information is advancing so quickly that I think that some really cool stuff is going to start to come out. With our understanding of how genes are associated with how we are as humans. And potentially maybe first to come out will be in health. And so, we're starting to get a better idea of, what your genes, how they might interact with how you respond to a cancer treatment, let's say, right? This is this precision medicine idea. And so more and more work like that, this precision medicine, is going to...
You got a fish on the way down. Worth it.
Look at that point count.
Yeah, count it.
Yeah, so that stuff will probably matter more and more, and then I hope maybe more in education.
Along those lines, machine learning, it's invading everything. Presumably your field is... Are you diving in?
Yes.
You are?
Because
You're
it is
committing?
invading everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I had a PhD student go pretty deep in it. I had a project that I was really interested in using machine learning to understand a little bit more about our data. Right? Like I've kind of told you all, I'm really interested in understanding kind of all aspects of the individual that matter for student achievement, right? So not just one area, not just the economic area, not just where you grew up geographically, not just your socioeconomic status, not just your genes or your family history, not just your motivation, not just your prior skill, but all of those things together. And we were hoping, the hope right now is that machine learning can kind of more accurately put all of those different influences, all of those different reasons why some people do better in school than others people, put them all together in one model and help us then predict who might be a better student than other students.
So for those of you not familiar with machine learning, it's this idea that you feed a whole lot of data into a computer, and through magic neural networks, it comes up with some kind of, we'll say, polynomial that says this variable contributes this much, this variable, like it tries to find patterns that we as humans might not be able to find in those big data sets. But you need like 10,000 data points or something ridiculous to do a lot of it.
Yeah, I'm not... in our data, we don't need, what I was thinking about using, we don't need 10,000. But you definitely need like for
need
1
a
and
lot.
2 samples.
Yeah.
You need sample 1, sample 2 to test it.
Yeah, you need a control set and a, I don't remember. Oh man, I do not remember this castle at all. You are on your own on this one. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm trying
Skip
to remember
7
too.
for
What I am actually trying to let myself do is not think about it and see if
Just
motor
happens.
memory
Let's do it.
will remember
just close
for
your
me.
eyes. Just
Yeah. Because I don't remember this castle either. I can't believe I'm already at World 7-4, actually. Thank you, everybody, for keeping me occupied as I do this. Without... Oh!
keep
I
up
did
the
it.
grind. All right, so contrasting with productive things you think are going to happen, what is the flat earth / anti-vax equivalent in your field? Is it the only use 10% of the brain, or like what is the pop culture?
Yeah, well, talking about education, right? So I am not an educator, I'm not in education myself. I haven't taught a child to read myself, right? I study the basic reading processes. Of course, I don't remember how I did that. But
No worries.
learning styles, if we're talking about education, is a big one.
You're talking visual versus...
Yeah, tactile
Yeah.
versus,
And that's been debunked pretty
Yes.
thoroughly at this point.
Yes, but definitely invades popular culture.
Well, left brain, right brain too. That's completely...
Yeah, that's another one. Anything brain related, I would say, is pretty, the idea that you have specific areas of your brain only to do, that you have some specific areas of your brain, I guess. I shouldn't talk too authoritatively about areas of your brain. I don't know. We have a brain.
I mean, but the brain
It's
is
up
very,
here.
it's
Yeah.
very adaptive, right?
It is,
like,
yeah.
It
and
takes one person losing a hemisphere of their brain to debunk all the left-right brain bullshit.
Yes.
Right? That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I remember this from my high school psychology class. It was one guy got a pipe through his brain, and it took out a chunk. It's Phineas. Phineas
Gage.
Yes, that's the one, and it like changed his personality, changed his character, but he could still function. Like he didn't lose. He might have to learn certain things again, but the brain is adaptive. That's why we've survived as a species this long.
Yeah. So
So
yeah. So I didn't really answer answer your question too, Bob. The idea. So one that I dislike sometimes. It seems like some of the the people watching have heard about this genetic stuff. Like there was a question about the genetics of spatial ability. So that those studies are normally like have lots of press related to them and are people pay attention to them. And they, unfortunately, a lot of the press releases tend to take a deterministic view. And that's where, remember when I mentioned Gattaca? That was the problem with Gattaca. Yeah, that when I'm talking about these stuff, like if something is genetic, or when molecular geneticists are talking about, human molecular geneticists are talking about, something being genetic, we're not talking in a deterministic way. Just because you have a gene for something does not mean that you will then have the outcome. And I said that, but also know that there's not very many things where you just have one gene for anything. So the genes or the variants of those genes.
Well, they're also learning like the metagenetics. It's not just the sequence, but it's where it's located and how it's like this. It's a really hard problem, and I don't think it's appreciated by the average person that looks at a sequence and says, "I should have a written text of my existence."
Yeah, the Human Genome Project, right? They thought they were going to blow it open. They thought it was an engineering problem, right? They thought it was like going to the moon. Yep. We just have to map the human genome, and we will understand all of human genetics, and that's not the case. It's the environments matter, and how genes are interacting with each other, and what variant of the gene that you have, and that is just from my I am not a human molecular geneticist, so that's just my understanding of that area.
So speaking of that in general, so there's nature, there's nurture, and it's obviously a very hard problem, but sometimes it's an easy problem, right? Like the swear words the kids use are nurture. And then other things like, I guess, schizophrenia or earwax or something crazy like that is nature. Is there any interesting examples that are one extreme or the other that people might not be aware of? Some things that are definitively nature or nurture?
So let's do some interesting examples. So normally in my class, so I now teach behavioral genetics at the undergrad level. I told you I used to teach child psychology.
Before you do those examples, you shook your head when I said schizophrenia or...
Yeah, schizophrenia is not genetic.
It's not just genetic. No. Okay.
Just about every human complex trait, like schizophrenia, like anything you can imagine, is both. So I mean, that makes sense. So like I learned this recently. Schizophrenia manifests differently depending on what culture you're in. So like in the United States, it's a I don't know, aggressive voice typically, but in other countries or other cultures, it doesn't necessarily manifest that way. It can be encouraging. I did not know that.
So double check me on that. I'm not an expert. I just read pop science. But anyway, extreme examples that we might not be aware of, things that are definitively nature or definitively nurture.
So the two answers to that, there is something, the most genetic trait that we have. Can you guess what it is? I'm going to pretend like you're my class and make you guess.
Anyone want to throw a guess? Can you give a hint?
It is a physical trait.
Physical trait?
Yeah.
Oh, does anyone in chat have a guess? This
is still a complex trait. So this is not like single gene to disorder. This is like a complex trait that have lots of genes related to it.
So it's a disorder? Was that a hint?
No.
Oh, okay.
It's not a disorder.
Anyone want to guess on that? I have guesses. So I've seen research that says, like twin studies, homosexuality is more correlated than left-handedness. Oh. Is that one that has a genetic origin or primarily driven by genetics?
Same-sex attraction. There was a very famous, wide-reaching study that came out a few years ago where they looked at the genes of that. There is a genetic that is, but not, again, we're still talking, both genes and environments matter for most complex human traits. But yes, there are genes that are associated with same-sex attraction.
All right, that was my guess. What's the real answer?
Height.
Height. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah. Height is the most, has the highest, in twin studies, what's called heritability. So the extent to which genes are influencing individual differences are the reason why we're different from each other. Height has the highest. It's around 90% of the variance between individuals is due to genes.
Wow.
So a really great predictor, if parents out there, a very good predictor of how tall your children will be is the midpoint between you and the other parent of your child, their height is a very good predictor.
So I've looked up those calculators online.
Have
and
you?
Those are good. Those are legit.
I think so. Yeah. I don't know about the game and calculators online, but it is a very genetic trait that you inherit from your parents.
All right.
And the least.
So, well, let's mark Sara Hart's words here. My daughters will be 5'9" or 5'10". We have a testable hypothesis here.
Oh, okay. Let's see.
We'll see what happens. Quote this, clip it. 10 years from now, we'll see whether this is right or not.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right, not correlated.
The least genetic trait that has usually no genetic influences.
So Vestib on here is my wife. She said, daughters will be so tall. Love it. She wants them to be taller than her. Anyway, least correlation.
Yeah. With the least genetically associated trait. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can you? This is. It'll probably be very difficult to guess. I'm trying to think of a good clue. I can't think of a good clue. I'll just tell you all.
All right, we'll get the answer.
Yeah. So the least genetically associated trait is what religion you are as an adult.
That makes sense.
Now, I mentioned that. So being religious is a genetically associated trait. You inherit that.
Predisposition.
Predisposition is like a personality trait, like religiosity is genetic and environmental.
But flavor
is an entirely environmental, because if you think about it, it's highly correlated with what your parents were.
Yeah. You are the religion you were born into.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that you do all the,
ritual.
Yeah.
No, that makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm. All right, in the height discussion, Grapes asks, I'm shorter than both of my parents. How much does gender matter for that? I'm a woman.
I think that gender matters quite a bit on average heights. So the type of work that I do, right, it's individual differences. So like how different people are from each other. I can't speak really to average means. So like on average, men are taller than women. And so my work doesn't really speak to that. It's just kind of in general, two individuals different from each other. Right. This
we ran out of time.
Can
someone in chat tell us which way to go? Just say up, middle, down, or whatever the pattern is, because I don't know the answer.
I like it. We can't watch me fail more and more and more.
We're playing Ask the Chat Gaming. Someone give us a sequence here.
Or maybe this is the time that I switch over to Super Mario Brothers 2. Because I'm doing really poorly at it.
All right, Vestib has a question. Do you think the nature-nurture is a paradigm that is here to stay, or might there be a better paradigm in describing this idea?
Oh, goodness. That's a very philosophical question, I guess.
We're thinking deep. We're drinking beer and playing Mario. This needs to be... we're going for depth.
That's a good, probably... like dissertation defense type question.
Because there are nurture triggers for nature. Like you can modify genetics based on external environment.
Yeah. So when I say
that,
in reality, how things work is that they work together, right? Yeah. They interact, and they also are associated with each other, and so it's not as simple as just saying something is genetic or not, or environmental. It's definitely not that simple.
Except for height and religion.
But again, even that, right? To have a choice of religion, you have to grow up in a religious household, typically, right? And so that wouldn't even be something that you even know that I would even pick up in my models as a.
Oh no! It did a load state. Sorry, I was searching for the answer to
that.
I
was like, did somebody save me?
And I did. Oh no. All right.
That's okay. You put an end to my
No, we got it. We got a Game Genie code. We're going to put this in right now.
Actually, it might take this second to take a quick break. You get the game loaded up.
We'll We got a game break here.
Okay, game break.
I apologize. So she's playing on an emulator on my computer, and so when I hit the right sequence of hotkeys, it ends up screwing up her game. So my search for codes screwed that up. Sorry, we're adding Game Genie codes right now because we want to jump to 7.1. All right, we're going to check if this works. It did not. All right, I might try to speed run this to 8.1 really quick so we can get Sara back to roughly where she started. Also, feel free to ask your psychology questions to me. I will give you an answer and it will not be right. My question to you is, how are you so big-brained? It's years of Mario. It's made me quite good at braining. Oh, there we got the sequence. All right, so I'm going to speed run you to 8.1. So let's trade places and you can answer chat.
Yeah. This is cool. And then everybody gets to see your speed running.
Is there a way I could... That one right there.
Yeah, I could text a file of my data to mess with and see what genes I have. Yeah, you know, you could. So, like, if you've done something like 23andMe, they will give you, if you ask for it, they will give you a full file of, like, the raw data of your DNA. And there are websites online, I believe.
Here's 4.1 speed run.
Oh, you're just going to show up now, aren't you?
Well, no, it's just run as fast as you can and jump over piranha plants.
But you can, so you can put that raw data file into, I think, programs online. I don't know anything about what they're doing with that data for programs online, but they will give you details about that, though. So they'll do...
All right.
You lost a couple
I
seconds.
did. I lost.
I saw it.
6
That was embarrassing.
6 tenths.
Yeah.
It's on record. Clip it.
And yeah, so you can do those polygenic scores, like I said. So they'll look across your whole genome and they'll look to see what variant of each gene you have, and they'll see, you know, how much that's associated with possible total educational attainment or other things like that. So you can get your DNA and mess with it. Okay, my question to you is, how are you so big-brained? I don't know if you're talking about the size of my head. I have a very large head. But just so you know, the size of your head / brain is not associated with anything of interest, typically.
Anything of interest.
Yeah.
That was very open-ended.
I think it's things like the folds in your brains and other, certain matter. I shouldn't talk like I know anything about this, but other things matter more than the size of your brain. But I do have a large head.
All right, 8.1.
And big hair.
That's yours.
Is it? Oh, it's a no. I have.
We skipped 7.4.
Oh.
It's fine. Infinite lives. All right.
Now you're gonna see me struggle with that jump again,
yes.
aren't you?
No,
like my
you're
entire
gonna
childhood. This is gonna be real.
Manifest on
Yeah,
recording.
we're gonna bring back some childhood
Trauma.
I'm already getting I'm getting sweaty and anxious. Because again, my jumping is my worst skill.
This is nurture in action. Yeah. This game changed your DNA.
It did. I was an only child, and so I had, for some of my childhood, I had a TV and my Nintendo in my bedroom, and I would probably stay up. Hi, Mom. I stayed up a little too late playing Nintendo. And losing to this game repeatedly. Oh, shnikes.
It's good life lessons.
Okay.
Chartha plug. For people with scoliosis that undergo surgery, which makes them taller, will the kids be around the normal height or will they be around the scoliosis height? Ooh.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. Why I hesitate about it is I don't know the genetics of scoliosis. And so I don't know if the genetics of scoliosis are that it changes the genes of height, or if there are scoliosis genes that then override the genes of height, with the genes of height being what you inherit from your parents. And so I don't know if scoliosis is just one end of that distribution that you inherit from your parents, or something unique on top of that. So I don't know the answer to that question.
All right, what are the most significant issues with the current approach to education? Ooh, active learning, flipped classroom. We're gonna dive into this.
That was terrible. Why did I?
So chemistry is taught the same way it was 100 years ago.
Really? You guys, aren't you all into active flipped classrooms now?
No. It is chalkboard. I think that's most of chemistry. Physics is on top of it. They are doing active classrooms.
Okay.
But chemistry is not.
I am in no way an expert on this.
You are more of an expert than me or anyone in chat, so feel free to espouse
I know that you
your
heard the
expertise.
scientist in me coming up being like, I can't.
Yeah, disclaimer.
Yeah,
But
disclaimer.
still, expert-ish.
My understanding, and I don't know field-specific understanding, but my general kind of, if asked at a cocktail party understanding of that area is that...
I like to call it Wikipedia understanding.
Oh, I call it cocktail party. I always talk about it like cocktail party facts. Is that the like flipped classroom idea where students learn the like content, like they watch videos at home and then do the problem set in person with the instructor, then able to help them kind of with the more difficult part, like like doing it. That works really well for students who are already going to do well in the class. For the students who naturally were going to do better in the class. And so it's hard for students who were going to struggle in the class to keep up with that type of learning, because they have to do then a lot of self-learning of the actual content without an instructor.
And so in this case, flipped classroom is do homework in the classroom versus, or watch videos at home, do homework in the classroom. And active learning is differentiated how?
I don't know what the technical definition.
But
the active learning, I would think, or things like it could still be traditional lectures, but that it's broken up more with like discussion or hands-on learning in the classroom.
Much more engagement, interaction,
type. Not just sitting and listening to lectures the whole time. So it still can be learning the content in person with your instructor, but that it has a little bit more engagement. That's how I think of active learning versus flipped classrooms, which are the majority of the active learning of the content area is occurring at home. The student is watching videos or doing it themselves, and then in the classroom with the instructor, they're doing the problem sets. And yeah, if you can just imagine, the students who are more naturally going to do well are more likely to do well. Oh, that was random. Who knew that star was there?
Everyone that speedruns this game. So fun factoid about that star is that no other box that you hit affects the timing of this game except that star. It drops the flag at the end 2 pixels and saves you 0.3 of a second.
What you just said.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
This is the most optimized game in Nintendo history. Like the fastest a computer can run this is like 455.2. The fastest a human has run it in 455.6.
No.
Like there is a human that has done 4 of the 8 levels on computer-like skill level. It is crazy. His name is Cosmic. Follow him. He's amazing on Twitch. Absolutely brilliant in this game. But yeah, I speedrun this, so I love this game. Anyway, is IQ inherently inherited, or are there environmental factors that influence it?
It's both. It depends on your age for interesting reasons, which might be a longer conversation that we can get into if people are interested. Yeah, it's both. Usually the rule of thumb is 50-50-ish.
50-50-ish.
Yeah.
That's convenient.
It is very convenient.
Oh.
I beat all that hard stuff when that happens.
50-50-ish. Do you ever find yourself doing back of the envelope calculations?
I do. That's a great question. So one of the things that I love most when I teach behavioral genetics, the nature, nurture, twin study stuff, is if you read, that's the first time I've even seen a one up. Whoa! Sorry. If you read our papers in our field, they look really, really complicated, statistically complicated, conceptually complicated, and especially to undergrads or to new students to the field, it can feel very overwhelming and feel really complicated. But the basic math underlying the type of work that I do is actually 3 really easy formulas that are just literally addition formula, like algebra that includes addition. That's it. And I love showing students that basic math. We can do all kinds of complex statistical models on top of it and do, all this crazy, interesting stuff. But that at the heart of it, understanding kind of what's nature and what's nurture is actually just 3 pretty easy math equations that involve subtraction and addition and solving for x. I like showing that. So, what I tell students is that even with my complex statistical modeling, I still in the end double check myself. And if I'm reviewing other people's work, I double check their work with the simple back of the envelope calculations. And if your fancy statistical program doesn't reproduce what I think 3 easy equations should give me, or give you, then something's wrong. And so I always do that check of any paper.
So every time a Gen Chem professor said, double check your answer, turns out that's an applied methodology. Like, just do the simple test. Does it make sense? Does it correlate at all?
Yeah, that's it. When you do more complex stuff on top of it, it still needs to pass the simple test.
So Von Mecklenburg 01 has a follow-up. What are the environmental factors that influence intelligence, and what does age have to do with it? Let's start with the first one. What are the environmental factors?
I actually don't keep up with the intelligence literature that much. And I know I'm going to differentiate between intelligence and school achievement, but there is actually quite a big difference. And so I don't keep up much with the environmental things about intelligence. Socioeconomic status would certainly matter. And kind of general things I won't name past that. So that was helpful. But, I study reading and math. And so we have found, for example, let's give an example. So I found pretty consistently for reading, at least, an environmental component that matters is this really crazy, it's a questionnaire, but it's a broader idea. And it's called chaos. And it's kind of how chaos is actually all caps chaos, and it stands for like confusion, hubbub, orderliness. Can't remember what the A is, and I can't remember what the S is scale. But it's the idea of like how loud and unorderly your home is negatively associated with children's reading ability.
Clever acronym.
Yeah, right. Chaos. Yeah. And so the idea, what we think at least, we don't actually know what it is. It pretty reliably matters though, but we don't. It's one of those, like, we know a questionnaire is correlated, but we don't know exactly why. this is one of the ones that I'm terrible at.
That's one of the tough jobs.
Yeah. And it's, we think, children need a kind of more of a quiet, organized space to do homework and to think, and to learn. And if you don't have that at home, that's potentially negatively related to some stuff that we can measure in school. So that's one that's always quite interesting. So the questionnaire are things like, there's a TV always on in my home, or it's a zoo in my house, or it's hard for me to think in my home. Those are the types of questions that we ask parents to rate, and that's negatively associated with reading.
With reading, okay. So IQ it's a very specific test, right? What are your thoughts in general about IQ?
Yeah, that's like a whole thing. I don't think over beers and Twitch is the right thing. Right. But yeah, IQ is different than intelligence. Some people equate them, but IQ is how you perform on a certain IQ test, right? And whether that's meaningful to you or to your culture is like a whole thing. Mm-hmm. But intelligence in general, I think, is important. That ability to problem solve and to think creatively and to find solutions, I think matters. And whether you think we have a good way to measure that is, again, a whole thing, because some people think IQ measures that, some people don't. Yeah. That's maybe all.
That's
a
hard. Yeah. So we have Lilycat XO in the chat, and she's I assume I'm sorry if I got that wrong, but former student of yours. Speaking of IQ, or we'll say speaking of intelligence, how do you think early childhood trauma plays into intelligence? I'm a trauma therapist for children and notice most are more mature for their age and do better academically.
Oh. I actually don't know much about that at all. The idea of adding trauma, which was typically always the wheelhouse of social workers and maybe clinical psychologists, to our models to understand student achievement, is pretty new still. And so I actually don't... we're running into the top end of my skill here, and so I don't actually know the answer to that question, unfortunately.
I mean,
or even have good cocktail party stories about it.
Well, I mean, data sets for that has to be just tough to collect in general.
It's just typical. You're right. So you have to that's it. I think you bring up a really interesting question, right? In psychology, maybe more than other areas, right? I ask questions of my participants based on what I think might matter or what my experience has been, right? So that chaos questionnaire that I just told you about, I know that's pretty consistent that matters, that seems to correlate with school achievement. And so I make sure that in any data collection I do, I ask the chaos questionnaire. But I have not necessarily always had the same experience with trauma. I don't know good questionnaires about it. I don't know much about that trait. I don't know much about that measure, measuring that in participants. And so I don't typically give it in my questionnaires to my participants. So I've never even looked at data that has it. I've looked at data that's had the negative life experiences, which is somewhat like trauma, but not quite the same. So if a parent has had a medical crisis or death or something like that.
Almost speed, almost.
And if you've moved, or if you've had a birth in the family, kind of, I've looked at that, and that has only sometimes been associated with children's reading scores in schools. But trauma itself, I haven't looked at.
So Lilycat responds with, definitely going to use chaos in my assessments. You reminded me of how useful it can be.
It really is. It's one of my favorite questionnaires, and I always try to tell people in my field to use chaos. I really am fascinated with the idea of we don't actually know what chaos is actually measuring, which is like a whole, probably really too specific for this circumstance, that we know we can measure it pretty fairly reliably, but we don't actually know what it means is fascinating to me. So that we know it means something. It's pretty reliably negatively correlated with kids' outcomes, kids' achievement outcomes. But we don't, like, I don't think it actually has anything to do with the TV is always on in my home, or it's a zoo in my house, or I can barely hear myself think in my home. It's not that. It's a proxy for something else, but what is it a proxy for? We have no idea, and that's fascinating to me. But
Von Mecklenburg. Is it possible to be high achieving on standardized tests with average or below average intelligence?
Mm-hmm. It is.
I think that's a general question about it. So you guys accept the GRE in psychology?
Yeah. Hang on. Yeah! Exact same thing again.
I think you have to commit from the first jump and just
no way,
go
really?
all the way through. Yeah, you have to have the momentum. It's coming, don't worry. All right. Standardized tests.
Yes. We, in general, as a program, we do. I am the director of developmental psychology, so I kind of head that area in my program. And we, as of this year, now have GRE being optional. So you could apply for our PhD program if you have had a good enough GPA at the undergrad or graduate level prior to coming into our program and have had research experience. You can have a waiver for the GRE to our program. Otherwise, you can submit your GRE scores if they're good, or if you don't have those background characteristics that allow you to apply for a waiver. The only other area in our department that does that is neuroscience, and then the other areas are all requiring the GRE this year.
So I kind of hijacked that question. Does GRE or standardized tests performance correlate with intelligence?
It does correlate. I actually don't know how much, though. It is not perfectly correlated.
Mm-hmm. I mean, so presumably, practice testing plus whatever, I mean, that changes the outcome, but yeah.
Yeah, so like things, like things related to intelligence, like your ability to learn or change in your circumstances are all kind of related to GRE. But GRE is also related to your ability to access GRE prep lessons, which is a financial access.
Or tutors or...
Yeah, it's also related to your motivation to study the way that you need to, or your ability to take it multiple times if you need to, or...
If you want to go to USC, who you're connected to and how much money you're willing to pay. Anyway.
Yes.
Anyway.
And so, they are loosely related. I actually don't know the full number. If you all are interested in this, a really great, cautious, thoughtful researcher, his name is Stuart Ritchie, has a book on intelligence, and kind of
How did that happen?
Bullshit, by the way.
No, that was bullshit.
Yeah.
Want to clip that one too? That made up for your fire bar one earlier.
Yeah, that did. That was
the Mario gods made it even.
Unfair death right there.
They made it even.
Stuart Ritchie has a book on intelligence and kind of what we know and what we don't know about it, and you all might be interested in that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, he looks at the literature. He looks at the literature and kind of gives you a what it says.
I love those books. Psychology books are some of my favorite ones to read because it's so far outside of my domain, but they do some awesome research. All right, Stib, how has your experience impacted the way you approach parenting? How has your experience impacted the way you approach parenting at all? If yes, in what way?
I would assume research experience, probably.
Yeah.
I guess
or
that's
the things you know that we don't know.
Like I said, I think it makes me a more low-key parent.
You are not a helicopter parent.
No, I occasionally I am, and then I try to take a step back and oh, that was a controller fault.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's internet connection.
Definitely internet. So I'm more low key. I try to be more forgiving of myself. Yeah, am I helicoptery? Yeah, but again, I'm trying to then sometimes be forgiving of myself for that as well. So I would say that, I strive for good enough parenting.
Gotta write a book.
And good enough is on average or across years, not days. But again, my kid is really into right now, like making sure that I love him. He brings it, and so we have a lot of discussions about how I'll love him no matter what. Even if I'm mad at him, I still love him. Even if he's made it's a poor choice. And he asked me questions like, "Will I still love him if he kills me?" Which is unusual.
Scuzzbot clipped that, by the way. So we have a clip for the fire bar and the beetle that killed you. Okay. So we have evidence of what occurred. So you can go back and review your footage.
Thank you very much.
All right. Fullerene 60C. Favorite podcast/broadcast? Oh, self-pitch. Do it.
Yeah, so I do have a podcast. It's called Within and Between. It is a podcast on developmental science, but we mostly focus on, we call it the methods of developmental psychology and the meta science of it.
So can you say the name again? Colin, can you search for this and put a link in chat?
That's nice of everybody.
What is it called?
It's called Within and Between. So it's a podcast on developmental science, but we do a little bit less about the research and more about the methods of developmental psychology. So it's me and a good friend of mine, Jessica Logan, and she's a professor at Ohio State University in education. And we talk a little bit about, she's a statistician methodologist, and so we talk about the types of methods that people use in developmental science. And then we talk about meta science. And so that's the idea of like how scientists do science. And we mostly then parlay that into advice for more junior colleagues or students in the area. And so a little bit less about like content area of developmental science and more about how the sausage is made.
So there's a link in chat if you guys want to take a look. That is also my favorite podcast.
Obviously.
I haven't listed, but I'm going to. I genuinely enjoy this discussion.
And then for if you happen to be a female academic or an academic in general, I'm really liking Acadame's podcast right now. That's kind of like what we are trying to do with Within and Between, but it's they've been around longer and do a great job. So Acadame's I love listening to. And then I really like, I listen to Freakonomics, the podcast of Freakonomics quite a bit. And I listen to I'm terrible at names. Other podcasts that I don't remember the names of right now.
No worries. General descriptions are fine.
Yeah. It's going to kill me, and I'm going to want to take a break and pull out my phone so I can tell you all of the specific names because I don't remember.
No worries.
The cereal ones are obviously amazing because me and like every other person on the planet love. Okay, so you think I need to run fast?
Yes.
You think this first one I can run?
So jump and then jump right away with forward momentum. Oh! I promise you it works. I've beaten this game before.
I think this is the level that I don't think I...
This was the one? Okay, it wasn't 8-1. All right.
Well, I successfully easily passed 8-1.
If you get to that jump again, I can do it if you want to just skip that part.
No.
You're going to earn this? Okay. Commit all the way. All right. So personal question about language learning.
Radiolab.
So
sorry, that's
Radiolab.
What it's called. Yeah,
everyone loves
Radiolab.
Radiolab.
Yeah.
That's an easy one.
Yeah.
So personal question. As a child of the 90s, You remember this as well as I do. Maybe in Canada it was different, but in the 90s, Disney Afternoon had Hooked on Phonics commercials. So Hooked on Phonics was huge in the early 90s. For those of you that don't know, it had this catchphrase, Hooked on Phonics worked for me. It taught reading and language through phonetics, spelling, and things like that. But they also settled a lawsuit in like 95 for false advertising.
Oh.
So do you know anything about it? Like me and my brother were part of this. My parents bought this program. And so all I remember learning from it was how to do the alphabet backwards really, really quickly.
That's what Hooked on Phonics did?
Well, that was one aspect of it. It was trying to, like, I don't know, frame, letters in terms of not memorizing the sequence, but there's something different than memorizing a reverse.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of understanding the phonetics and also the phonetics of language and like the phonemes of language are really, really important.
Mm-hmm.
So you probably don't realize what you've stepped into by asking me this question.
I have no idea. All I know is I can do the alphabet backwards and I spell stuff wrong because I spell it all phonetically. Like, I didn't get better at spelling from that.
Typically that knowledge should probably make you a good enough speller.
Good enough to become a professor in chemistry.
Yeah, not learning phonics typically makes you a poor speller.
I see.
That because I actually did not learn in that system, and so that's why I think I'm a bad speller.
Oh, really?
What I learned in what is called the whole language system, where you're encouraged to just like memorize or guess words based on the context and the pictures around it.
Oh yeah, that was like there was like 3 rules or something of context,
and
that's been debunked, right?
Yeah.
That's been thoroughly debunked.
So that's why I was like, oh yeah, what you asked, but you would think that, but it's scientifically it has been debunked, but
it's still taught.
Yes.
Infiltrated.
Yeah, and so it's called the reading wars.
Uh-huh.
They were a huge thing. Okay, hang on.
Nice.
Everyone's like, we hope we can be done. And now it's going to be one of these damn things that's going to kill me. Oh no. Okay. Oh goodness. I'm not.
You're okay.
Oh goodness. I'm starting to
We're
this
so
is the
close.
first
We're
time
pausing.
I'm starting to get sweaty.
No
I'm
science.
sorry, guys.
No science.
Oh, good.
Third step, stay there.
Okay.
Yes.
Sorry.
8-2 completed. Yeah, we do need a heart rate monitor for Ask a Scientist gaming. This is stressful.
I got a little sweaty on that.
8-2 completed. All right, stress relieved.
Yeah. So, whoops. Ooh. So the science of reading. The reading wars and the science of reading is a big argument. And like I said, I have not taught a kid to read. I haven't been in the classroom. There are more scientifically supported ways to teach most children to read. And that usually is teaching them a little bit about phonics, the understanding that there's the sounds of our language and that we can kind of use those sounds to help us read, that is a more effective approach than saying like guessing.
So I guess follow up on that. So English is kind of a stupid system that's an amalgamation of a bunch of different languages. Do you know about language learning or reading in other languages?
Just the tiniest amount. Yeah. So we have what's called an opaque orthography. And so that means that our written language does not fully map onto the sounds, like one-to-one correspondence. So there are other languages that are easier for children to learn to read because there's one-to-one correspondence of the sound to what is written, like printed. And yes, those languages are easier for children to read words than English is. English, a good system to teach children to learn to read is you need to teach children how to the sound out words, the sounds of our language, and then also they just need to learn some what are called sight words. Often you just need to memorize some words.
Yeah.
You don't need to memorize them all. that's because we learn in English, which is not an opaque orthography.
So Scuzzbot, what is your favorite equation? So interestingly, the quantum chemist and the astrophysicist gave the same answer.
No way.
Yeah.
Did they have a favorite equation?
Yes, they did. I mean, that's what they do.
Yeah, I don't think I have a favorite equation.
Yep. They totally not Eugene said Euler's equation, which is Eugene DePrince, who was the first guest on Ask a Scientist. but David Collins said the same equation.
What equation is it?
It's Euler's equation.
Oh, okay. Is that Euler's?
Yeah, yep. So not like the Roche model fitting or any of the three equations you described for predicting outcomes?
I would say probably then the correlational equation, but the issue is that because correlation is the basis of individual differences, which is what I research. But what I was worried about is you're going to ask me what the correlation equation is, and I actually don't remember it.
We don't have to do that here.
Yeah.
We don't quiz people.
At this Monday evening at almost 10 p.m., I actually don't remember what the correlation equation is.
2 beers in video gaming.
Yeah,
we don't need to quiz. This is not a qual exam.
But I love correlations. That's how like one variable is associated with another, and that's the basis of, in part, what I do. So I love correlations. Awesome. I could spend a long time looking at what is called a correlation matrix. So like all of the variables in a study, how they're related to other variables, and just like look at them because they're pretty cool.
All right, Lily Cat has an easy one for you. Dr. Hart, was it your lecture that someone brought in their cat into and kept meowing throughout the lecture? I think you'd remember that one if that were true.
I don't know about you, but a lot of crazy things have happened to me while I'm teaching. So sometimes I don't really actually remember what a lot of the crazy things are. Gosh. You know, I don't remember. I don't remember if that was mine or not. You know, it might have been my big child psych class. I also had somebody show up to my child psych class completely in that like Green Man suit.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
It's from Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Yes. I have had all sorts of weird things happen. But you're right that it did happen in my child psych class. You're right. In the cat meowing. I do remember. Yeah, it did.
That's awesome. Ontario Gator. Hello from Canada. Maybe Miss Pac-Man next time.
This is my dad.
Well, hello, Sarah's dad. Welcome to Twitch, Ask a Scientist Gaming. We have Sara Hart.
He is a big Florida Gator fan.
That before you got here?
Before, but I swear that it really came out hardcore.
It's oppositional?
Yeah, after
I
started
Dad.
my job here. But it's
interesting.
He's got a tattoo now, a Florida Gator, so it could go either way.
Wow, that runs deep.
Yeah.
Well, respect. Thank you for stopping by. Thank you for coming to Ask a Scientist Gaming. If you have any questions for Dr. Sara Hart, feel free to ask them. All right. So I have one for you. So I looked up your recent paper, and it's titled...
Oh, my God. You're busting it out.
Wait, Nature Might Be Nurture, Cautionary Tales and Proposed Solutions. Mm-hmm. And so that is an awesome title, and I read the abstract. And so this is kind of a debunking paper where it's like people do something consistently wrong, and it needs to be fixed. So when people are assigning nature versus nurture, what do they do wrong?
It's actually less the people who are assigning nature versus nurture. Mm-hmm. That paper was for developmental psychologists, so like my peeps in my area.
Yeah.
Specifically, people who are interested in parenting, who are interested in the role of parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, how many times has your pediatrician told you should read to your child?
I think every time.
Yeah.
Right, and they give us books sometimes. Actually.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's all fine and good, but as a behavioral geneticist, right, I know that nature and nurture matter. Mm-hmm. And that's a concentration on just nurture. And so some of developmental psychology is interested in the role of parents on their children's outcomes. And I think that we should, for the most part, Sorry, this is a particularly difficult.
Oh, no, here it is. Here's the end. You don't have to talk during this.
No, okay.
Eight 3 done. Nice, well done.
This is it?
Yeah, 8-4. This is the last level.
I don't think I've ever.
Ontario Gator, congratulate your daughter on beating 8-3. It's exciting.
This is very exciting. I don't think as a kid I finished it. So my skills have gotten better as an adult.
That's probably true.
Yeah. So anyway, so what I think is when we say things like, the bad jumping, and I forgot about that thing. When, parents should read to their kids or else your kid will be dyslexic. And so if your kid ends up being dyslexic, which we know in part has a huge deal, a huge portion to do with genetics, right? That dyslexia runs in families. If you have a parent with dyslexia, you're more likely yourself to have dyslexia. And so what I think it leads to is parent blaming. And I don't know if you've gathered enough, but I don't like parent blaming. Mm-hmm. I don't like that stress that we put on parents. And so I think that without accounting... Oh, do I need to go down there?
Yep.
It's too late.
No, keep going. Do you want these hints? I don't.
Yes, I do.
Oh, okay.
I would love to finish this game.
You're going to start through on the cycle again.
Okay. Anyway, so if we don't account for both what's genetic and what's environmental with what parents are doing in the home, then I think we result in parent blaming. Or parents feeling bad about themselves because like, oh, okay, my kid's struggling to learn to read. It must be because I didn't read to my kid enough at night. Never mind the fact that that parent may have themselves struggled to learn to read or someone else in the family did. And whoop, we don't necessarily always account for that.
So you
as
want to go in that
psychologists.
pipe right there.
Thank you.
No problem.
So that's what that paper is all about, methods that of people who are interested in how parenting affects children's outcomes, methods that they can use to apply to account for these like inherited genetic differences. That was just bullshit. And inherited genetic differences.
So this is the preface to Good Enough Parenting book?
Good Enough Parenting, yeah. Well, what I want to know, to be honest, I say Good Enough Parenting, but I think parents want to actually know what matters and what doesn't matter, right? Mm-hmm. That is just in general me saying that. But, there are people out there who actually, that was just accidental. There are people out there who are actually trying to figure out what really does matter or not, like specific things, not just is it good enough, right? Mm-hmm. And so all I'm saying is if you're really interested to know what really does matter, then use techniques, methods that you can control for known genetic confounds so that we can say for real to parents what does matter and what doesn't matter. Does it really matter how many minutes a night you read to your child? We don't know. Not when you're also controlling for the fact that struggling to read runs in families. And so families, then what this means is families who, with a parent or parents who struggle to learn to read, they are more likely to not read to their kids because it's hard for them. Mm-hmm. And so then you set up this correlation where if you read less to your kid, then your kid had worse outcomes, but that has nothing to do with you reading to your kid.
So Vestib happens to be my wife, so she has a vested interest in this. With
Thank you for listening in.
You mentioned earlier that you shouldn't withhold love. That's helpful to know, but can you say more about what it looks like to show love or withhold love?
Oh, I mean like saying that you don't love your kid because they've done something bad, which can be sometimes a reaction, saying like in this situation, I'm so mad at you, I don't love you, so that you can still support and love your child even with the choices that they've made at that given time can make you upset, or they could have been bad choices and you can still be, mad at them for those bad choices, but that it doesn't take away the fact that you love them.
It's a heartfelt answer. It's important though. So totally not Eugene, which is Dr. Eugene DePrince. Let's say that for the sake of argument that my kid's daycare class is closed for 2 weeks because of COVID. How many times can she watch Frozen before she breaks forever?
Yeah, I actually thought I was going to get a lot of questions like that tonight. The like screen. Oh my god, I almost just died.
Go
back.
Up
there.
You want to go back? Wait, maybe you can. Nope.
I'm gonna start again.
It's gonna reset the cycle.
Yeah. And really, I was like trying to think off the top of my head like what my cocktail party story was for screen time, and the research is not. At best, we don't know, and it's probably okay.
Yeah, we had that discussion at one point because the World Health Organization came out with
Oh, I hope I shouldn't supposed to go down there.
No, unfortunately. But the World Health Organization said no TV before. What did they say? It was something like that, right? They had a claim.
Oh, they have retracted that a little bit now.
Oh, really?
What did they say?
They said
I think it was
nothing
before
4 or something.
4. Yeah, it was really, I think quite
Yeah.
old for what most parents are dealing with.
So
these
they
days.
hardlined no TV before 4 years old.
No screens, yeah.
But that's not supported. And they've since backtracked, is that?
I think they have backtracked a little bit. Time.
Fullerene60C would like to interject some anecdote. I watched WALL-E about 100 times and turned out okay. For some reason, I like robotics and programming now, though.
Unrelated to WALL-E.
Yeah, nurture for the win.
I don't have a good party answer to that.
So that pipe right there,
It's
the first
second
one. Nope,
Oh, the
left.
first one. Oh.
Yes.
I need you to tell
Sorry,
me
I'll keep
more.
track of this.
Okay,
I'm
thank you. I'm
distracted
about to
by
die.
chat.
It's okay.
Nope, you're doing it again. Oh,
Yeah.
Time's out.
I'm talking, so I'm forgetting the path to
No worries.
completion of
This
this.
is the hardest well, maybe not the hardest level in the game, but the most confusing level in the game.
Yeah, what I would say is, especially during COVID, everybody's trying to do their best and parents are trying to survive. And the best thing you can do is not be getting incredibly angry and upset with your kids. And if that means that they get to watch screens so that you get a break, that is better for them.
That's fair. Cost-benefit analysis.
It is cost-benefit
It might damage
analysis.
them, but not as much as you being a...
Yeah, if you
Yeah.
being angry, and particularly if your reaction to anger is to withdraw love or to maybe have like a physical repercussion, then like spanking your children in general is not related to great outcomes. And so if that is...
That was a very gentle way to say that.
Yes.
That's pretty definitively known at this point,
It
right?
is, it
Don't
is.
hit your kids.
Don't hit your kids.
It's bad for them.
It is bad for them because it's usually associated. It's not the the hitting is not great, but it's actually typically then also associated with withdrawing of love.
Ah, I see. So it's a symptom of a...
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And so don't, if your reaction to your children is, because you've just had enough, or you're stressed because you're also trying to manage your full-time job with having them at home, or whatever your situation is, if what gets you through it is some screens, then everyone's going to be okay. Likely.
Eugene said, whoa, 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 whoa. Who said anything about hitting anyone? That's fair. And
Nobody
then
did.
Bastib responded with, if you were spanked as a kid, what long-term effects are there?
I actually don't know if the research of the long-term effects. And you probably were like, well, is there actually, that's not what you were really asking, but that to me then is a research question that we need to look at long-term effects. And I don't actually know the long-term effects. I do know that there is considerable evidence that this is again my cocktail party story.
Good enough for Twitch.
Yeah, there is considerable evidence to say that there are negative outcomes in kids.
Don't hit your kids.
Don't hit
we
your
can
kids.
confidently say that.
We
Don't
can,
hit your
yeah.
kids. Also, teachers don't hit students anymore for the same reason,
Oh my
presumably.
God.
Corporal punishment turns out doesn't work in classrooms.
It does not.
All right. Fullerene 60C, screen times makes me wonder, what is the age where a child could have their own device? Ooh, do you want to? I don't think there's a good answer for that yet.
I don't think there's a good answer
The
for that.
data set is being developed as we speak.
It is.
Good or bad, we are going to learn that answer.
I think because it is that's a hard question.
So in this pipe.
Yeah, okay.
Totally Not Eugene says 38. Is that the right age?
Everyone is. Yeah.
So go past this next pipe. You're going to go across the gap, and it'll be the pipe after that.
Okay.
That one. Water world.
There's water?
Yes. In 8.4, there is a level of water.
Yeah. I don't know if we know.
So you can walk across the bottom here and not die.
Oh, okay. That's great.
All right. Now this is the last screen of the game. So there's a Hammer Brother, and then there's a Bowser, and then an axe. Well, Hammer Brother, Gap, and then axe.
I'm not even big.
No, this is a non-trivial ending. Oh, so close.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to good screen time. I think because the answer is there's lots of different reasons, whether your kid is old enough to know if friends are making poor choices or, to talk to you if their friends are saying mean things to them or or they see questionable content online and to ignore it or to not go there or to there's all kinds of different things that kids have to be cautious of online or to post pictures of themselves that are inappropriate or videos of all of those have different answers for what age children should be, and so I don't know the correct answer to that, but I actually don't know if anybody knows the correct answer to that.
Yeah. We're the last generation to remember life pre-internet.
Yeah.
And these kids just grow up in that where, feedback has no repercussions. Anything you say doesn't necessarily come back to haunt you, or it could.
I was just talking to friends. I'm like, we grew up in a time where we didn't have to worry about videos of ourselves.
Yeah. The stupid shit we said when we were younger.
That's it. Yeah, one of my friends literally was like, there were at least 6 times in my life where if there had been a video, it would have been a fireable offense.
Oh, yeah.
And,
The one plus side, I've thought about that before, is at some point in the future, like 20 years, nobody is going to have a spotless record. So this idea of having to be pristine to run for office or something just won't, people should get desensitized to this, right? Otherwise, we're going to select for a very, Mennonite, Amish type, where you didn't use the internet at all and don't have any recorded history. But I don't know. The future is going to be interesting.
yeah. I know, I just keep secretly hoping that it's going to be different for my kid. The era will be different. I don't have to worry about it.
Do you post pictures or videos of your kids online? It's getting personal. You don't have to answer that.
No, yeah,
if you want to.
I would say that I used to when my kid was like 1 or 2, especially for family. And I would say that the internet's changed even in the amount of time since my kid was 1 or 2 since now. And now I think I missed the thing I was supposed to do, but I purposely don't know.
So do you give them the option to say if they want it shared, or did you just don't at all?
I don't give. I know because I think at 5 he doesn't understand that.
Okay.
But I will say that just tonight I was videotaping him, and if my dad's still on, I send them videos of him all the time, and I was taking a video because he was singing a song that's hilarious. He is really into Old Town Road right now, which is, I guess, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep. I guess Kids Bop has it now.
Kids Bop.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's
he
gotta
calls it
cost some
emoji songs or something now. They have a new name for it. But he was singing it, and it was making me laugh because it was hilarious. And the fact that he's singing Old Town Road is hilarious.
So over the gap, next pipe, this one.
Okay, this one. And so I wanted to take a video of him doing it. And he got really upset with the idea that I would forward the video to somebody. So he made me swear that only, down. Oh!
So you got to get over the first part and then under.
And then
second.
down.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
He made me swear that I would only show like my husband and I and nobody else. I would not send to Nana and Baba.
Wow.
So he has he's starting to get an understanding.
No, he understands internet.
Yeah. And it wasn't over the, that was just text, but he gets like the sharing and the things that he's doing. Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So.
Florian 60C brings up an important point. Never trust a 5-year-old.
Yeah. That is true.
Profound words of wisdom.
I know you want to trust them because they actually tell the ultimate truth in the end, but at the same time, it's always just like truthiness. It's not quite. You're like, that doesn't seem quite right.
That's awesome. All right. Any more questions from the chat for Sara Hart? We've been casually discussing for a while. Does anyone want to know nature versus nurture, math, reading, learning, developmental psychology in general? Any questions, even those that haven't spoke up? A random one which you may or may not have an answer to. What's a crazy or weird factoid that you've learned along the way? This is another cocktail, I don't know, not anecdote, but momentary factoid you'd share.
Yeah, so people normally are really interested in twinning and twins. And so a fun factoid is commonly you've heard probably the story down this pipe that twins run in families, and that is only somewhat true. And then go down after here.
Yeah.
That was lucky.
Yep, block this entire thing.
Okay. Twins, fraternal twins, or okay, hang on. What am I supposed to do now?
So after this, it'll be a Hammer Brother.
Oh, that's right, and then Bowser.
Yep. Hammer Brother, Gap, and then Bowser.
Oh, I should have gone. Okay.
So there's an arc of hammer you can stand inside. Woo! Just commit. Oh, so close.
Just ran under. And is that it? That's the end?
Yeah, that was the end. That's the end of the game right there. But yes, totally not Eugene. It's this is warpless except for 7-4. I screwed up by hotkeying it. So yes, we'll say this is a warpless run. Yeah, too many hammers.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, this is an easy one. Or unrelated to psychology. What's your favorite Mario level so far?
Playing this game right now?
Yep.
I'm like barely paying attention to what I'm doing.
It's true. It's hard to focus.
It is hard to focus. So I'm like, I actually was shocked to know that I was already this close to being done.
Yeah, it's almost done.
Yeah. So it's hard to pay attention.
We have 49 minutes left. So you are going to beat this game tonight.
That is great. And like legitimately.
Yeah.
I know. Hopefully.
Well, except for the Game Genie codes. But still, you're getting through the entire game.
Okay, that minor thing.
Except for that.
That.
All right. What interesting research is underway right now regarding technology and children development? Is there anything you know of that's... I mean, somebody's looking at these questions.
Yeah, I would say the role of like apps, potentially. That's a big thing in COVID, too. Like the role of apps in teaching children anything. And whether screen time is purely just negative, or if there can be positive screen time as well, is I think really interesting.
I mean, there has to be a cost benefit, right? Because you can't function in society now if you can't use a computer, right? So there has to be like a threshold where it's mandatory, like it's not detrimental, it's necessary, but that's not known yet, right?
No, it's not. Yeah, I don't think it's known. I feel like because, with us elder millennials.
Elder millennials. Millennial Xers.
Yeah,
what do we count as? Yeah.
We remember a time before and after, right? We learned the technology and to be successful in like the technology world. And so we know that individuals can learn it, whether you like grow up with it. And I think that's a newer question. Whether it's all, well, first of all, if you read the news, it's typically a lot of screen time is just negative and it's fear mongering. But whether we should be fear mongering about it, there's a question.
Yes. Follow up. If studying the role of apps in COVID and how it affects learning, how long does it take to get an answer to that question? Oh, that's interesting.
That is an interesting question. It depends on how long term we're wondering about.
I was going to say, like, you're going to have a COVID twin study at some point, right? COVID babies.
Yeah, that's it. And so it really, right? The problem with developmental psychology is if you're interested in how it influences kids' learning and development and change across time, you have to wait for kids to get older. And so you have to wait for them to age. So we won't know the role of COVID. We won't know the role of COVID on like children's learning right now. Or
that pipe.
Oh, shnikes. There's psychological health, long-term psychological health for whatever that long-term looks like for what you're interested in. So we have to wait for kids to age, unfortunately.
That pipe.
Yes. Okay. After the jump.
Yep. And I would go up and then down.
Okay.
And walk. Yep.
I really would like a mushroom. Is that possible?
Not an 8-4. you are on your own. The makers of Mario were like, if you've made it this far,
no mushroom for
you need to do it alone. Yep. So you can get inside the hammer arc.
It's then that I should go, right? Oh, I just looked at my time. Woo!
Oh, so close. All right.
I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this level.
We have 50 minutes or 45 minutes.
You're really testing my my persistence.
Predictions about how long-term... sorry, there was a jump. Our current questions predictions about the long-term effects COVID will have on kids. Oh, that's interesting. Like if you had to, like, we're going to have a generation of kids that are going to wash their hands constantly. Right?
Yeah,
like
I think about that with my kid. He's real crazy about washing his hands right now.
Yeah, like our 4-year-old knows the big sick, and she's known it for several months now. Like, any guesses, like back of the envelope hypothesis you'd like to throw out there?
I don't know about that health stuff nearly enough.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, even in terms of learning, right? Because like the social distancing, I mean, there's social development.
Yeah, so a huge thing. So we've talked about how good enough parenting, right? But there is a whole hypothesis about the importance of friends and the importance of other kids. And you can't help but be around a kid and see how much they learn from other kids. And so with so many kids being at home right now and they're not learning from other kids, I think we have no idea what the repercussions of that are, especially because there's never really been a time where, there's been a time definitely where kids are not around other kids in classrooms, but there's not really been a time where other kids are not around other kids in their neighborhood, at least, like it would be in their village or whatever it is. And, we don't know what the repercussions of that are. And we don't know what the repercussions of not being around a teacher for children who are learning from home or learning entirely online. Previously, the online learning has been pretty niche. And so that we have many more kids who are doing it, and they're doing it with teachers and systems that were not prepared to do it. And so we don't know the repercussions of that at all. And then, the like health stuff. Then now all of a sudden you're telling your kids to stay away from other people, which is kind of weird too. You know, any random person they meet in their environment, like we're like, our neighbor walks kind of near our yard and we're like, you know, yell at our kid to stay away from them. All of this stuff is just totally, as best I know, to research unknown.
So Fullerene 60C has a non-scientific hypothesis: less acne later in life. Presumably if they wash more. Is acne, has that been solved? Is it caused by... It was like anecdotally it is caused by grease and whatnot. But
I think it's just hormonal.
I think there's a lot of genetic and hormonal influence there. So that's a fun nature versus nurture question.
It is, I don't know the answer to it, but I thought it was mostly hormonal.
Yeah. So Lily Cat's comment: kids are so resilient. I think it really relies on how well the teachers and parents are adapting to virtual learning. That pipe.
I do say the same thing, that kids are resilient, and so I'd like to think that. One of the things that I love about reading and math development and kind of studying that for kids in schools is that has to be, explicitly taught, right? So it's not that kids are resilient or not. Kids are resilient for sure, but those skills have to be taught, and we are not necessarily teaching them in the most effective way right now. And whether kids are resilient for that, we probably know what children are resilient, and it's not equitable what children are resilient or not. And it will likely be based on socioeconomic lines, which then is highly associated with racial lines here in the U.S. And so some children, it's going to be harder to make it up than other children for the loss of the instructional. What the heck is this dude doing?
Go. Commit. Just run and jump. No. I have never seen him run forward like that. That was amazing. He's just like, I'm sick of waiting. It is time. We're going to have this throwdown.
We're going to die now.
Oh, that was amazing. All right, little readers. My daughter, 6-year-old, is excelling in reading, but somewhat below average in math and art. Is it a zero-sum game? Should we encourage her to do what she loves at the expense of what she doesn't?
At 6? Right? You said
yes,
the kids
6-year-old,
at 6?
Yep.
No, that's not a zero-sum game. I think at 6. You can start to see natural inclinations, but also I've noticed sometimes you can see like what parents push, and so like my husband and I are real interested in math.
Ooh.
And so
placebic, like
so you tend to push that more, or encourage more in one area, and where my kid went to school with some children whose parent was a professor of art at FSU, and let me tell you, the art that they made was incredibly beautiful. And so in part it had probably, they're genetically inclined to being good at art, and in part inclined because their mom loves to do art. So no, at 6, I think it's way too early to know what they're actually going to be successful at.
So my follow-up, when is it good to decide or start getting an inkling?
That was a natural follow-up, and I don't have an answer to that. Maybe high school, when real firm decisions are being made. Is this mother effer going to come after me again like that?
I think if you wait long enough, yes. So you can theoretically stand like, just go. Jump. Victory!
I can't believe I did it!
Through the hammer.
I don't know if I ever did this as a child.
Congratulations. We'll enjoy the credits. Well done.
Wow.
Got to the axe.
And that's the end. And it just went back to the beginning.
That was it. There's a little bit of a cutscene at the end, but yeah, it's Nintendo. It's unceremoniously brings you back to start over again.
Wow. I'm a little sweaty. I'll admit it.
You need a break? Do you need another drink?
Yeah.
All right. I'll grab another one.
Yeah, I'll switch to a cider, please.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you.
Do you want to switch games, or how do you want to go?
Yeah,
next?
I'll switch games. Let's do.
Mario 3.
Yeah, let's go to 2 because I haven't.
Okay, Mario 2.
Played that since I was a real child.
Do you want the U.S. or Japanese version?
I did not know there was a difference.
So if you're familiar with and Eugene will attest to this. So the Super Mario Brothers 2 that was released in the US, it's very different, where you pick up guys and throw them and it looks different.
Yeah, that's the only way I know it.
The reason that a game exists is because the original Mario 2 was too hard for the American audience. So they remasked a different game. So we can do the American Super Mario Brothers 2, which looks like this.
Yes, this is how I know it. This is, remember I told you I was watching the first video and I was like, that doesn't look familiar at all. Is that the Japanese version?
No, that's this one. This looks very different than every other Mario game.
Okay.
So, all right. Don't do that. Pick the American version. Yes.
Okay.
The Japanese one is really hard, actually. All right. I will be back. Story there. Any other questions for Dr. Sara Hart?
Yeah, I'm reading some of your questions over here. Yeah, so in math and English classrooms, how important is the instructor's facilitation structure and student learning and development? Math and English learning to read are, I normally like to be princess, are explicitly taught skills. So, teaching them is of utmost importance. And what the instructor, the curriculum that the instructor uses can matter quite a bit for children. And there are some that are more supported by science than others. Like we were talking about a little bit earlier, ones that are kind of based in kind of phonics and other science of reading areas. It's been a long time since I played this game. So, Fuller in 60C says, I was forced to take math again after high school. I found the self-reliant environment of college much easier. Interesting, you kind of get into individual differences of like how some students prefer for like motivation and structure, which I would say that there are differences in that. Especially when you're talking about students who are already going to be at that level. So, when we're talking about young kids learning reading or math, there's kind of pretty set scientifically supported ways that we can teach kids. When you're talking about much older levels, kids who have already been successful to learn the basics of reading and math or learn past the basics, then you might see differences in what some students prefer over others for learning. But I say that and then I wonder still too, there probably still are some better, more scientifically appropriate ways that some kids, oh, that's right, I forgot about this. When I talk about this stuff, again, I'm talking about right now I'm talking about the average. So like on average, what works best for some children. And so there's always individuals who don't meet the average, who are different than the average. Thank you. And so that might have been you. Yeah, so I've heard that children, M. Kizzy says that I've heard that teachers of young children who say that science is hard or math is hard has a lasting effect. Is this true? This is an area of research that I'm really interested in right now. This idea of like math anxiety or math confidence. And there is some thought that teachers who choose to go into elementary school teaching do so because in part they have higher math anxiety, and so they're avoiding kind of the harder math, so they go into elementary school because they think the math is easier. Meanwhile, that's like a key time to be teaching children math and the rules of math and kind of the key foundations of math are really important. You can see how terrible I am at Super Mario Brothers 2, by the way.
It is a
I didn't own this
crazy
program.
Yeah. All right. Do you want infinite lives?
Yes, please.
All right. So chat, I'll pose a question while we do this transfer. So you've heard the line of hard sciences versus soft sciences, and it's typically
Nothing makes me more upset, actually.
I was curious about your opinion because
That's why I call it behavioral sciences.
Yeah, I mean, so hard sciences, it's a misnomer in the sense that it's more difficult, because I'd argue it's
actually easier.
Yeah.
It's just like I said, I call it an engineering problem. It's not always engineering, but it's just
it has less opinions and decisions than you
yeah,
have to deal
or
with.
fewer individuals. There are universal rules that we just don't have in human behavior, especially when we're talking about psychology, our understanding of human behavior.
Yeah, I think the hard and soft when it was initially, at least my guess is that it wasn't in terms of difficulty, but more in terms of the certainty. You know what I mean? It's you have much blurrier lines than I do in chemistry, for example. But I don't know if that's actually true.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I don't know if that's true, but that's the way I interpret hard versus soft, because it is like, how sure can you be in an answer? And there's certain things I can be 100% sure on, or almost 100% sure.
Yeah, and it's like killing me to not be even more. I actually don't know how to.
Down and B. It should be down and B or
No.
A. Is that not picking up?
No.
What?
Try that again.
Right. The controller just crapped out.
I'm like, yeah,
There it is.
it's down in B there, but for the POW it wasn't working. Oh, I need you. No, I don't need you. Everyone's gonna watch Sarah just do level 1.
No,
of
everyone
Super
watched
Mario
Sarah beat 8-4 in Mario. That's all they're gonna remember is you taking out Bowser. It's not picking up?
No, I don't know what it's doing now. What is that?
So press down, and I don't know what's going on. This might be a glitch in the game. I apologize.
Okay.
Eugene, any insights?
Oh, nope. Yeah,
Emulator fail.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might be right. All right. Any other questions for Dr. Sara Hart? Developmental psychology, nature, nurture.
Well, I guess while we're at it,
mathematism.
I never fully answered the question, so I do think it's really interesting the role. There was some evidence to suggest that teachers' math anxiety and then on the other side, then lower math confidence, then can influence the students in their classroom's own math ability. I would say that was just kind of entry level evidence at this point.
God, no on pause. I apologize. You should be able to go on top of that.
The first time I did it, I was able to. Oh, I kind of pressed in between the left and the down, and it worked.
Huh. Oh, all right. We got a follow-up here on COVID and its impact. Is it possible that mask wearing in schools or daycare could impact student-child language acquisition?
Yeah, I think some people are worried about. Some people are initially worried about that because children get, non-verbal signals from facial features. But I really think we have no idea.
This is going to be interesting.
Yeah.
COVID research. I mean, what's crazy is we're going to study this, and then 100 years from now when it happens again, everyone's going to ignore all those results anyway. So, awesome.
I know, I was wondering, I'm like, what science was known from, the Spanish flu? What did we know about kids at that point?
I read somewhere that Spanish flu was a misnomer. It was because it originated in the U.S. or in the Americas, but it was only Spain was the people that were reporting it honestly.
Yeah, and so there was all kinds of different racism based reasons.
Biasing behind that.
Yeah.
No. Science-based decisions. Who needs them? I agree. Weren't kids working in factories during the Spanish flu?
That's a great question.
That was 1918. Was that? Yeah, that was.
It's real close.
That's
I
child
actually
labor
don't know
laws?
when the child labor laws came out, but it was real close.
I'm guessing 1910s, but I don't know that for sure.
I don't know that for sure either. And I feel like I should, because I think I teach. There's some really interesting part of like how I start to teach child psychology is, you know, even our understanding of childhood has changed and has changed culturally. You know, during certain, you know, centuries, sometimes we have thought about children as separate and different, like we do now. You know, we have adult laws and laws that don't apply to children the same way. But there were times when we didn't have that, like child labor laws, where kids were working and things like that, and not mandated to go to school. We didn't think that school was a universal right, and that then has implications for not only how we understand children and then study them, but then also whether we even have any research on them. This is quite embarrassing to watch.
It's not a great, like, in terms of handling and gameplay, it's not as clean as.
No,
that was nice though.
I am not nearly as good at this one.
But you're reaching the first boss. Do you remember these guys? How to beat them?
Oh yeah. I need the. Oh
no!
I did
off
not
the
remember
bounce.
that.
I didn't know it killed you off the
it
bounce.
came off.
All right, let me grab a game genie code. We will give you infinite
Okay.
lives, and we can march through this as far as we can. Encoder. Sorry, this will just take a moment.
Do you have any insights on the impacts of racism on child development? Like, how are Black and Latinx children impacted by the ways race is made salient for them or the ways they experience racism?
All right, you should be good.
Okay. To be honest, I wish we had better insights on it. I would say a remarkable amount of the research in child development has been almost entirely on white middle-class children. And so with the assumption that then all children are universally the same. So our samples have always been like that, which is convenient samples to researchers at universities. And so that, you know, there has been less than we should know about those samples to those populations. And so, no, way less research has been done in those areas.
So a follow-up on that, is that like data availability driven or bias of researcher driven?
Oh, bias.
That is, it's people want to study their own kids, is that?
Oh, no, I would say more like who was easy to grab and who's easy to grab, but other, you know, we're talking about bringing kids into the lab or researching kids. It's hard. And so who's easy to grab? It's the lab preschool. So the preschool at the university, so who goes to the university, or who are kids that are nearby that are easy for you? Well, they're your colleagues who happen to also then be white and middle to upper class. You know, their kids are easy for you to research. And so we don't know, I would say, nearly enough about them. In general, it does seem, you know, that the case that at least for some individuals, again, I'm an individual differences researcher, so I don't think that many effects happen to occur to everybody at all times. I think that some people are more influenced by some things than others, and so that for some children, things like microaggressions, being asked always how to pronounce your name, because your white teacher doesn't recognize the phonetics of your name, or being told that you're not going to be as successful in a test, or whatever it is, they have huge and profound impacts for some children. But we don't really fully understand or know that yet because of our sampling of our participants, and because mostly white researchers who have been studying child development don't even think to ask these questions because it hasn't been their lived experience.
So got a long question from Eugene. We'll ask the Fullerene 60C question first. I was listening to a podcast about voluntary COVID vaccine testing, and it's considered to be approaching unethical to offer it to financially needy groups as they may be more willing to do it under pressure of their situation. Is this the same with minority groups and psychology?
So we have at universities, we've had what's called
It's not going again.
it's real sensitive to get that to work.
I don't know why it's doing that. Anyway.
We have institutional research boards, IRBs, and they are governing oversight to our research ethics. And so they are paying attention to what we pay participants. Or
I don't know.
got it that time.
All right.
Or otherwise what we offer to participants for their participation in our research. And so, I'm trained in those. I think about those issues, and then my IRB also thinks about those issues.
So that's interesting. Is there a sweet spot of monetary compensation that's not biasing the
There
sex?
is.
What is that? Is there a number behind that? Like, well, how does that?
Yeah, so to give you an idea, I normally pay like a parent to fill out a questionnaire of mine, which is maybe like half an hour to 45 minutes for most readers.
Mm-hmm.
And I pay them normally like $40 or $50.
And that's like an evidence-based dollar amount that does
I wish
the
there
least
was an
damage.
evidence basis.
Okay.
That's based on my
That's
experience.
the common consent. Okay.
Yeah, that's
interesting.
based on what has worked for me before here in Tallahassee and surrounding areas. No, I would say there's actually very little research. That's kind of this meta-science idea, like how scientists do science, and there's actually very little research on that, of what works and what incentives work or don't work for participants that are not then unduly, making participants do stuff that they wouldn't necessarily normally do, but because the money seems so good.
Mm-hmm. So this game might be the orphan child of the Mario series, but Birdo is the best bad guy in the Mario franchise.
Is that Birdo?
That's Birdo. It's the name. Correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I think the name is actually Birdo.
Really? I remember there was a trick to get that proper. I used to be able to do that well.
Birdo. All right, so Eugene has a long one. Do you want to read this one?
I heard that super interesting radio lab where they were discussing the age at which kids could differentiate 1, 2, and more than 2. Sorry, you all can't read it. And I heard this super interesting podcast, radio lab potentially, where they were discussing the age at which kids could differentiate 1, 2, and more than 2. At the time, my daughter was 18 months or so, and it was clear she understood more than 1, but couldn't differentiate 2 and 3. Now she's 3, and she maths real good. Do you have a feel for when kids can differentiate 1, 2, and more than 2, and more complex ideas beyond that, negative numbers? I can answer some of your question. There is some research, and I don't do research in this area, so I'm loosey-goosey as to the full findings of it, but there's some research that looks at like number knowers, with the idea being you can be a 1, 2, 3, or 4 knower. And once you're a 4 knower, then there is no anything beyond that. You know it all.
That's interesting. There's a Reddit post recently that said, how high can you count transitions from knowledge to sheer will? As in, like, you can count to a certain number when you run out of your knowledge of numbers. You can count no higher, but at a certain age, you reach a point where it's just sheer will, because mathematics is continuous.
Oh,
right?
and so you just
so
get
if
bored.
you reach that 4 level of knowledge,
Yeah,
it's just
that's
sheer
at the 4
will
knower.
of,
Yeah.
It's just
And
sheer will of counting.
Yeah, so the idea is for the 1 knower, 2 knower, 3 knower, 4 knower is you ask children to pass you that many objects, and it's how far they can. Oh,
I
goodness.
see.
They can, how many objects they can give you.
Mm-hmm.
And so there are developmental stages potentially for the knowers less than 4 knowers. But I don't remember the ages, unfortunately, because that's a little younger than the work that I do. I mostly focus on what kids know in school learning, and that's all prior to school.
So negative numbers, that's
I can only speak to what I see my son doing right now in kindergarten, and they're learning 0 but not negative numbers.
You said that was 6 years old?
He's in kindergarten, so yeah, 5 to 6.
Okay.
So in part, it's hard because it's interesting. There's this weird relation between what kids could know and what we teach them, right? So all of these things are things that we have to teach children, and we have decided as a society what we are going to teach children at a given age. And so it's not that they couldn't potentially know this at a different age. It's what we have decided when we're going to teach what. And so I can only speak to not what kids could developmentally know, like what they're prepared to know at a given age, but what we have decided as a society is that kindergarten, at least at this age, my child is learning 0, but not negative numbers.
So I have a follow-up, and we haven't dove into this yet, but Common Core education. So there's a lot of opposition to it that I hear anecdotally from parents because it's not teaching the way they were taught. But
Yes.
You are an expert in this. Common Core, what are your thoughts? Well, what is Common Core, and what are your opinions on it?
Yeah, I actually have a study. My good colleague, Dr. Colleen Ganley, who's in my department, her and I
We'll be doing this at some point.
Yeah, she is also an Ask a Scientist. She really is the expert on this. Her and I have a paper. She is the lead of the paper, though, so I am just loosely affiliated with it. But we were really interested in understanding, like we were seeing these Facebook posts of people hating Common Core and the new math. And really, the new math is, as best as I know, mostly associated with what we know is a better way to teach children math. And it teaches them kind of the process and strategies of math and makes them more effective at math, even if they don't know the solution. And so many of us were taught math in ways that require you to just know how to perform that one strategy. And if you don't know that strategy, or that strategy doesn't work on that given problem, then you're pretty much screwed. And so new math gives kids the ability to solve a problem, even if they don't know the answer, they don't know the specific solution, they can work it out. But it takes much more initial learning to begin with, and it can be overwhelming to parents because it doesn't look like how we learned, especially if you learn like the common algorithm, or the way that we learn math.
The times tables and the times.
Yeah,
fill
and
out
so
the
there
sheet
is some stuff you should just memorize, and that's still the case. Kids are still memorizing some math facts. But they're also learning ways to solve math problems without that memorization, which is what we were relying on, right? And what are you going to do if you don't remember? What do you do if you don't remember the answer to something?
So is it, I have a syllabus day lecture where I go over this kind of topic. And so there's like Bloom's taxonomy. I don't know if it's Bloom's that goes over conceptual versus procedural, right? And so procedural is what we learned. Right,
Yeah.
and then conceptual is what they're teaching now.
Yes.
Is that right? That's
Yeah.
the difference?
Yeah.
Okay. And conceptual is generally applicable beyond.
What was that?
I don't know. But that's pretty fun.
That was kind of bullshit.
I'm just glad we got clips of the fire bar and the beetle death. Like, we won't get any clips from actual science, but the gameplay is going to be so cool.
I never would have thought that my time doing this would have been resulting in clips of gameplay, but here we are.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so what we found in our data, at least, we studied 1,000 American adults, and what we found was that things like higher math anxiety, lower math ability, and I believe, gosh, I wish Colleen was here. I believe also more likely to endorse more conservative political values are related to dislike the political values. I'm misremembering, but dislike of Common Core math. But in general, it is different, and it is on the surface harder to begin with, and it feels overwhelming to parents. And we're not giving parents a lot of supports at home to help them learn the new math, right? And so then they're expected to do these, help with their kids with math homework, which can be a lot. Math homework can be a lot. And they're not given a lot of supports to help their children. And that's not how they learn math. So it can be overwhelming and frustrating.
But it is an evidence-based strategy. Is the better way to do things?
Mostly.
It's better than it was.
Yeah, it is better than it was.
All right,
because
we'll
again,
settle
you're not relying on memorization strategies, which we know what happens with memorization strategies.
Yep. That makes sense.
If you forget, then there's literally nothing you can do.
All right. Question from Vistiv. My 4-year-old daughter seems to enjoy numbers and counting, but she's less excited about letters. Should we use our time with her to encourage her to interest in numbers or push her on letters? It's kind of related to a question we have earlier. The answer is, at 4, it doesn't matter.
More like both. Yeah. Know that at 4, whether she knows her letters does not mean that she's then not gonna have dyslexia or struggle to learn to read or other of those things, right? That's still pretty young. These are all things that you're doing at home, right? Kindergarten after 4 is when many of these explicit skills are taught.
So
how do I get up there?
Advice: duck power jump. So if you press down and start to glow and press jump.
Oh, thank you, Eugene. You saw me struggling hard there.
He was just frustrated.
I was like, I don't know how I'm supposed to jump up there.
Unrelated, we are now drinking Strongbow hard cider. This is Gold Apple, sponsored by Strongbow. No, I'm just kidding. Sponsor us, Strongbow.
You are happy to take money from Strongbow.
Yeah, I know, exactly. We'll talk science on the bill of Strongbow.
Yeah.
We're shameless.
What I would just say is, remember that like kindergarten and school is gonna also help teach your kids. And so if you all love to do math and that's what's fun and numbers and stuff, and that's what you want to focus on, that's what you're doing, but you can mix in letters. But just know that doesn't mean just because she doesn't know right now, it doesn't mean that she's not gonna ever know it.
And we had to drive to school this morning, and she saw it was foggy, and she's like, "What's that?" I'm like, "That's colloids. Depends on the wavelength of light it's scattering."
That's a lot. And what did she say to that? She's like, "Dad."
No, I mean, it wasn't directly like that, but it's kind of fun to like tell her kind of some scientific nuance because she digests some of it. Like some of it sticks with her, but it's not the whole picture yet. So it's going to be interesting to see. We made her say colloids. That is true. Oh, I'm going to damage my child so hard.
Nope.
Not withholding love. I will impose science, but not in a withholding way.
Yeah, no. She's going to be okay.
Yeah, no. Area code. We're fine. All right, we have approximately 10 minutes formally left.
Oh my goodness.
Any pressing questions from the audience? Someone that wants to know something developmental psychology. Did your dad bail? He did one comment and then left. I think later on it'll make it easier for her to recall what a colloid is. Maybe. I mean, retention. I don't know how long they...
Yeah, she's learning vocabulary words, so that's what I think is often called a tier 3 vocabulary word, so pretty high.
What is that? You can predict, like, the certain number of words a kid has heard by the time they're like 5 dictates what they do on the SAT, or there's some kind of correlation with that, right? I might be making that up.
I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
Debbie countered with her favorite word is booty butt. Does that matter? What are the studies on the use of booty butt and getting into college? It feels right. At daycare, she learned booty butt from someone and they correct her, so now it's the forbidden words that she likes to use.
That's amazing.
but we like casually use butt and like we're not upset about it. So we'll see how this turns out. Booty butt is the swear word. Nice.
Yeah, it's interesting. You know, we've been dealing with that with my son with the word fuck.
Yeah, oh, wow.
And at 5, it's a word that my husband and I both like to use. And my son is doing a lot of policing of that word right now. And so there's this area of language called pragmatics, right? This understanding of when you would use the word fuck in different situations, right? This kind of meta knowledge of language. And so we've been kind of working with him on that it's not across our parenting belief, at least, it's not across the board. And I would actually be okay with him using the word fuck at home with us. But his knowledge that, you know, he lives in the South and culturally the South, which has a different opinion about the word fuck than I do. And for a child to say that. And that different, you know, it's probably not appropriate for him to use it at school. And that's different than with us at home, you know, and that my husband and I can use it with each other in a non-derogatory, demeaning way, but in a casual, in the conversation way, you know, and these are really interesting language lessons that you're teaching your children.
So when does that meta knowledge develop? Like when can they actually start to understand that?
They're starting to do it almost immediately.
Okay,
so there is a babbling. Yeah, there's a babbling phase that children do before they even speak their first word, where they start to use ba 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 or ba ba ba, right? And so ba ba ba, what does that mean to you? Like what? If you use that with no words, but that intonation, that means a question, right?
Yeah.
Having that like rising at the end of the sentence is a question. And so they practice that with babbling even. So they understand that there is differences to how we use language and the tone that we use in language almost immediately.
Right, so I have a personal follow-up question on language use. So I've often been confused. So like across most languages, like just child development, they learn ba ba ba, ma ma ma, like da da da. There's certain phonetics that just come out naturally, and it's the shape of the mouth and what they can do easily, right?
Yeah,
and
the
it
easier
sounds
ones,
like
yeah.
that. And so mama and papa have become, or dada have become intrinsic to language and descriptors of parents. But I don't make my students call me Professor Hansen, and I don't make my child call me Dad. Right, and so they
what
know
does your children
she
call
knows
you?
my first name. Like they know Dad, they know my first name, and they'll use both of them. And so, is there any implication in that? Like, is that good or bad? Because it's like I don't.
Yeah, hopefully at this point you know that I don't try to put qualitative,
Yeah.
so I don't say whether something is good or bad.
That's fair.
But
is there value in defining a parent as dad and mom? Like, is there some intrinsic, like I could see...
No, but you are correct. We have evolved our languages to use dad and mom names, especially dad names, to be the first phoneme that children tend to say the easiest phoneme. So for English, it's dada or papa. And so those are the easiest sounds for children to make. They're like physically to make. And so then we've evolved our language to assign those sounds to dads.
So we've hijacked it to make it about us.
About dads.
Yeah.
And don't get me going on the patriarchy.
I will not. Clearly I'm opposed to it because I am Kenza to my kids.
Are you really?
Yeah, no, they know my first name.
That's
So-
cool. That was a purposeful decision you made?
Well, it was one of those, like, again, like my grad students or students in class, I don't make them call me Professor Hansen because
You're Ken?
to be honest, yeah, I'll go by Ken. Like I have the luxury of I'm a 6-foot male with a booming voice. I don't need additional authority through title. Right?
Yeah.
I just have it inherent to so I go with Ken to kind of humanize me a little bit more. And so I did the same thing with my kids. And so you make them call you Baba. Yes, my students call me Baba.
Do they really?
No.
I was like,
That was a comment from Fullering 60.
I'm like, we might need to have a conversation
Oh yeah,
about
no,
that.
that's when I get on record and
That
get
was
escorted
real.
away.
That was real awkward there. Like, oh.
No, my students call me Ken, and so that was a conscious decision. 'Cause
Even
I am-
undergrad students.
Yep. Yeah, I go strictly by Ken, but it's not. I'm not Southern. I don't ascribe to the authority aspect of it. So, good or bad, that's the strategy I've adopted. But as far as you know, I'm not damaging my kids because of that.
No.
All right.
I don't think names matter. I actually don't even know of any work that's even started to look at that. No, it's just a trick that we've used to give, especially dads, the name dad for dad to be these easy sounds that kids make. But I don't think it matters to what they're learning.
Yep. Well, guess we'll find out.
Yeah.
This is a long-term study. I have 2 data points. One of them I will allow them to do it, the other one not.
Well, you know, the joke too is that parents are, believe in nurture until they have their second kid. So their first kid, they believe in nurture, and their second kid, they believe in nature.
Interesting.
Yeah, because your first one, you're like, it's all my parenting.
Yeah.
Until you have your second kid, and you're like, I'm doing the same parenting.
Man, that down B button is really screwing you on this
It
level.
is not great.
I apologize. I will double check the controller after this because this is terrible.
You see me struggling, right?
Yeah.
And you saw me complete all of Super Mario
I
Brothers
did.
1. I am not completely incapable, and I am not doing this very well.
No, I'll double check. But we are officially at 11 o'clock.
Oh,
so
wow.
It's up to you how long you want to go. But you have been playing Mario for 3 hours now.
I can't.
and
I
asking
had a
questions.
very late latte. That was a fun indulgence my husband and I made during COVID, was to buy an espresso machine.
That's an investment.
Well,
It's worth
Costco sale, I will say that. And so, yeah, I had a late latte in preparation for this because as a parent of a child, I'm normally in bed.
So you have a 6-year-old and
Just a 6-year-old.
just your 6-year-old?
Yeah.
When do they go to bed?
Usually around 7.
Wow.
We maintain a early bedtime for him for our sanity.
That is awesome.
Yeah. So, and he is a great child who likes to just stay in bed. So.
Vestib responded with, what?
I know.
7?
It is-
Question mark.
Right?
The
I
most
know.
important question of the night.
How did you do that? We randomly have some child who doesn't know, and he stays in bed till like 7 or 7:30 in the morning. He doesn't know that he can get out of bed.
That's the trick.
Yeah.
They also have them sleep in cages, but we won't mention that part.
We give him
No.
lots of love, though.
We don't withhold love, and sleep is the benefit. That's awesome. 7. It's nurture. 100% nurture.
Yeah, I guess if anybody has any final questions, I'm happy to answer them as I finish up my cider here
This is it.
and kill this person. What did you say this guy's name was again?
Birdo.
Birdo.
Fullerene 60C, good enough parenting.
Good enough parenting.
Absolutely. When you abandon your kids to play Mario, drink, and talk science.
I don't know what you're talking about.
We both did that. We literally both did that tonight. In fact, my kid, she doesn't go to sleep till 8. So at 7:30, she had a phone in her room watching Netflix PJ Mask. Because if she knew you were here,
she would want to come say hi.
Yeah, it's like there's a person in our house. I need to engage with said person. So we loophole that. And someday she'll look back on YouTube on this and blame me for all her problems. So
it's like a time-honored tradition.
No, it's true. And I'll say it's genetics. I apologize. All right. Last minute questions, anyone? No, if not, we'll wrap it up there. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it was great. Sarah, thank you for coming out and playing
you.
Mario. Congratulations on beating Super Mario Brothers 1. It's an achievement.
I actually, again, an achievement I'm not sure I made in childhood, so I feel pretty...
Well, this will be up on YouTube, so you can share it with friends and family and show the moment that you beat this game. And also, thank you all for coming by. It's been awesome.
Thank you.
It's been a really fun discussion. Our next Ask a Scientist will probably be in 3 or 4 weeks. We're kind of limited because we do a COVID test every single time we do this, so it'll be a few weeks. But I think the next one will be polymer chemist Justin Kennemore. So, stay tuned and keep posted on that, and we'll let you know when that's going to happen. So, thanks again.
See ya.